Hello, and welcome to episode 100 of the Curling Legends podcast. My guest today is Kerry Burtnyk. I started this podcast a little over 9 years ago, and I suppose it was always going to be fitting that Kerry Burtnyk would be my guest for a milestone like this. I first interviewed Kerry when I was in grade 7 or 8 for a junior high school project. It's so long ago that I don't remember the exact year, but I know I had recently started curling. I first started in the Saturday junior program at the Assiniboine Memorial Curling Club, the same curling program that Kerry was a part of and many others, some who I've talked to on this program. And like many at the club and like many other junior curlers of my generation and even afterwards, Kerry was our idol. He had the legacy of being the youngest Brier skip to win a championship. In fact, the youngest team, him, Mark Olson at third, Jim Spencer at second, and Ron Kammerlock at lead in 1981. Kerry also brought an aggressive approach to the game that was not really seen at that time. So in some ways, Kerry really helped transform the sport in Western Canada. So that style of play and Kerry's personality and just how he engaged was something that everybody admired. Some feared if you were trying to compete against them. But you always knew that even if you lost, you had an opportunity to play against one of the greatest. This conversation took place last February, just before the 100th anniversary of the Manitoba Tankard Championship. I visited Winnipeg, and in fact, on this day, which was the day of the banquet, I interviewed Mark Olson in the morning and then Kerry in the afternoon. And I'll be sure to release Mark's episode in a little while, and you can connect some of the dots. There are a few moments in here where I make reference to Kerry about my morning conversation with Mark. So just keep that in mind as you're listening. And as sometimes happens on this show, after the closing conversation, I've got a little bit of extras added as well, including a phone conversation that Kerry and I had recently. Kerry Burtnyk's accomplishments are many. He won the Brier in 1981. He won it again in 1995 and added a undefeated record at the World Championships in Brandon that year, being the first to do it since Rick Folk in 1980. In 2001, Kerry lost the Brier final as well as the final to the Olympic curling trials. And I wasn't sure how this conversation was going to go. I'm normally not too nervous for these, but given the history, I have to say I think I probably did have some butterflies heading in. We dug in a lot of topics. And we bounced around a bit. It was really a joy to talk to him. It was a fantastic conversation, and I know you're going to enjoy it as much as I did. Here is my conversation with Kerry Burtnyk. Oh yeah, I already started because who knows? I may catch you saying something you don't want to say, and then I can use it. This is not hardcore interviewing.
No, I'm going to say your interview with me is probably a little less colorful than some.
You never know.
You never know.
Well, we were talking about the Assiniboine.
Yeah.
Which I guess is the first place you probably threw a rock, I assume. Or no?
Yes, it would be.
Like, how old were you?
I was in starting grade 8, so it would have made me about
11, even 12, or
yeah. Let's see. It was the same year that the club burnt down. My first season lasted till Christmas time.
And what caused the fire again? I think it was.
Oh, I can't remember the cause, but it was a 4-sheet curling club, and actually it had burnt down probably 10 or 15 years earlier. It was a 2-sheet curling club. It burnt down somewhere in the late 50s or 1960, and they built a 4-sheet club. And then now we fast forward to, it was maybe 1971 or 1972. They had the 4-sheet curling club. I began curling at Assiniboine for the first time. This was my first curling in my life because we just moved into the neighborhood. And
because you came from where?
I came from not far away, the trailer court over by Glendale Golf Course, Downs Village Trailer Court. And I had gone to Hedges Junior High for grade 7. And then we moved into a house on Crestview Park Drive. And I got to go, the first guy I got to know in the summertime before school started was a guy by the name of Dave Shorthill. And we were riding mini bikes together and doing whatever kids do at that age. And back then, and he was joining curling, and both my parents were curlers.
Okay, they were. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
they were.
I thought
They were
so,
both curlers.
not competitive though. I don't. Right?
Well,
Or had they a little
bit competitive. Like when we lived in Thompson in the '60s, late '60s, and both of them went to the provincials. And actually, my dad was the lead for a guy by the name of Norm Prop.
Okay. Yep.
And that's back in the day when they had 32 teams in the men's provincials, and you started on 32 on this side and 32 on this side, and you worked your way towards the middle.
Or 64 then? Was it 60?
Well, it was 64 kind of, but no, you're on both sides.
You're on both sides, 32,
yeah. So like the men's zones worked that way too, but it was only 8 and 8, right?
Okay.
So anyhow, being probably the lowest seed, I don't know if there was such a thing as a seed back then, they played the number 1 seed on one side and the number 2 seed on the other side. And they won both their first 2 games. Boy. And so the headline in the newspaper was "Who'll Stop Prop?" Oh. So here I am back in, I think that was in 68 or 69. I think they were in Dauphin.
Yeah.
And
so you're just a little, when were you born? You were born in
Tyke. I'm like 10 years old, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Like what was,
I was born in 58.
58. Okay.
So I'm either 9 or 10. And back in Thompson, where we lived, kind of got excited when my dad's name was on the radio or his team's name was on the radio kind of thing. And it was either the same year or the next year where my mom went to the mixed provincials.
Mm-hmm. With your dad?
No.
Okay, interesting.
No, she went with a guy by the name of Dr. Bill Ho from Thompson. Okay. I don't know I can't recall how they did. But anyhow, they had both curled up there. And then, they were curlers and a bit competitive, not like...
One of my fond memories is that Assiniboine family fun spiel.
Oh, yeah.
Which, depending on how your family was, it may or may not be fun, right? It was like the Kirknesses, I recall being very competitive.
Yeah.
I remember playing in that one year with my mom and dad, I remember you, I think, playing did you play with your dad and maybe mom in that? Probably at some point, right?
I probably did. Maybe even my sister, because my sister curled too. She was a couple of years younger than me. But that would have been probably in the very early days.
Did you remember you'd have the Purdy's would come out, the McFadden's would come out? It was a whole, everybody had their own, the Clinks. Yeah, it was.
When I was 16, they still had the Charleswood little car spiel, and it was a mixed bonspiel.
Okay.
And the winners would get cars. And so my mom curled at Charleswood.
Mm-hmm.
So her and her friend Elaine Cockrell made a team just to go in this bonspiel for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And Gary Herdekant was my friend so it was me and Gary and my mom and her friend. And so we went into this thing and lo and behold, we start winning a few games and we ended up making it to the semifinals of the car bonspiel.
And you're 16?
I'm 16 years old and we're playing in Claire de Blonde. And I think it was Barry Fry might have had a big mixed team back then. There were some teams that they had just won the Canadian Mixter in there. Yeah. Like it was quite interesting. And so that was kind of my main experience of curling with family. It was just my mom, but
getting back then. So you mentioned how, was it your friend though that brought you to the club then, you said, or like your parents? Because you'd been in curling clubs then.
It was a combination of both. Like actually, before we left Thompson, there was a winter festival where there was jam can curling.
Oh yeah.
And so I went in this jam can curling with a few friends. This is probably grade 3 or 4. And we won the event.
I was going to say, you're going to tell me you won, really?
Yeah.
So it was like, I'm a natural at this.
I mean, that was my one experience.
You did not have a tuck slide in the jam curling.
No,
there was no.
Yeah. I don't think there was such a thing as a slide then. But so then now it's 3 or 4 years later before I actually started curling, and but my mom was at Charleswood. My dad curled with the Strathcona Club, which was at the Highlander then.
Yeah, okay.
They had still the 24 sheets.
Okay. Well, yeah, because the history of the Strathcona Club still is a little bit.
It had history before that. Yeah, like I think Bruce Hudson and some of those guys played when it was somewhere previous to the.
Well, that's where Hauk and Ursel and Orist, I think, was at way back.
I don't even know where that was that they played, because my involvement was
so they had moved to the Highlander.
Yeah, so there was the 2 6-sheeters and then the big wide 12-sheeter. Well, the 12-sheeter was used basically for rental ice and bonspiels and stuff. And one 6-sheeter was the Strathcona Club, and the other 6-sheeter was Maple Leaf.
Okay. Oh, that's right, the Maple Leaf Club. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all pickleball now, right? Probably, or what is? I don't know, or hockey rinks, or
they had converted it to hockey a number of years ago. I don't know if they've reconverted any of that to pickleball or anything, but it's been a lot of years since it was curling. Yeah.
Yeah. The connection to the Assiniboine is your friend then. That wasn't through your parents. Yeah.
And it was my friend, and my parents did curl, so I knew what curling was. So it was a combination of the two. And curling, the Assiniboine Curling Club was like a 10-minute walk from my house. And, of course, back in those days, whether you're playing hockey or whatever, you walked to everything. There was no parents driving you or anything. And
now, you did love hockey, though, right? You did play it?
I did. The first year or two that I curled, I also played hockey. And then, even though I liked hockey, I was really small.
Well, Mark said you were 4'2". Is that an overstatement or an understatement?
I'm gonna say that's a bit of an exaggeration.
You might have been a little taller. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe 5'2". When I first started, I know I was actually one of the shortest kids at Nest Junior High when I started curling, and I was in grade 8 or grade 9, I guess. Yeah. Then the
hockey career, the hockey dream was short-lived.
The hockey dream was short-lived. Yeah, I wasn't a serious hockey player. I probably wanted to be more serious, but I wasn't. And curling, I got into going there and hanging out with my friends, and we'd just sit there a lot of nights, not even curl, a lot, just hang out, and we'd wait for an open sheet, and if we got on, we got on, and if not, we didn't.
Now, important question though, then, because you famously were a Bruins fan. I don't know if you still are. Did a Jets fandom ever leak into that, or it was?
Oh, I was always
on the record here.
I was always a Winnipeg Jets fan.
Okay, because you did have a Bruins jersey, in a few old photographs. That's kind of famous.
I did, yes, and one of the main reasons I was a Bruins fan is because every year they got to play Montreal.
There you go.
And I was not a Montreal fan.
Yeah,
I was a fan of whoever played Montreal.
I was a fan too. I mean, I kind of grabbed onto the Neely Bork era team. I think you had an Orr jersey, didn't you? I think was that it? Yeah,
I had a Bobby Orr jersey. Yes, yeah. And then a few years after that, my cousin, who isn't a curler, gave me a Burtnyk Curling Connection jersey.
Oh yeah,
where it said that, and I think that's the jersey I actually wore when we won the provincials.
Oh really?
In 81, yeah. Yeah, we didn't even have team outfits.
No. Okay.
which was much to the chagrin of the MCA.
Oh, really? Even at the time, because it was
they frowned upon it, but there wasn't really a rule that said we had to. But I think very shortly thereafter,
well, you're jumping ahead, but you'd won a bit of money those couple of years. You probably could have afforded uniforms if you wanted to.
Could have, probably, yes.
But why, right?
Yeah.
Why, when you could
save
my
money cousin
for beer
gave me a nice
money?
Christmas present, so why wouldn't I want to wear that?
So, I got to know, did you ever try flat foot in that early stage, or was tuck just everybody did tuck in that?
I would say that I sort of tried it, because I'm pretty sure it was Don Duguid that came to Assiniboine in my first or second year and was giving a clinic.
Yeah, the camps they did.
Yeah. And I certainly tried to throw flat foot just to see what it was like. I didn't try it for more than, a very short period of time. It wasn't really a serious thought, but I did throw some rocks during the camp and probably a few practice rocks. But to my recollection, I don't think I ever tried to actually use it during a game.
Never do it. I still thought it fascinating. And I mean, I asked Don about this because he might have been one of the original tuck sliders, really. I mean, I think he was, because, he like his late claim to that. I mean, he started curling in the late 40s, actually, as a kid. So he was one of the earlier slides. I mean, I don't know. Did you model your slide after anyone in particular when you think about it as you grew up, or it was just everybody was doing it?
I think it was more everybody was doing it. I don't recall sort of trying to watch somebody and try and copy them kind of thing. No, but everybody around me was already doing it. Mm-hmm. Like there was some guys a couple of years older than me, and they were already curling, and they were all doing it. So
at that time, flat foot was almost you were in the minority.
Oh, it was
in Winnipeg.
It was a pretty small minority.
Is it mostly Winnipeg or even rural areas, or like it was just very common?
I think Manitoba in particular, but probably mostly in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
It from what I recall, there was, I would say, at least 70%, maybe higher, that were tuck.
And yet you had Rod Hunter, who was, flat foot and maybe had one of the best slides of anybody. But.
And I remember a couple of guys at Assiniboine that had a very pretty flat foot, and they even had a balanced throw. They didn't even use a broom and and things like that. But no, I never got influenced that way.
Well, I'm sure all the kids were doing it at the time. Complete generation, it seems like, that came out it was generally, you're going to be a tuck slider. And I guess at the Assiniboine as well at the time, it was, I'm even, I guess Hugh McFadden would be one of the rare ones, I guess I would think of as a junior player.
Yeah. And he, he's probably, at least 6 or 7 years younger than me. So he slid flat foot despite the fact, there was, my team and Mark Thompson and, numerous others. But even in our crew, like Blanchard and Lyle Derry, I guess, was kind of a half tuck, half flat foot. But so it wasn't everybody, but it certainly was. And there was a lot of reason for anybody that came after that, especially from Assiniboine, because I've seen some people be successful. And
so you just, that first year, you just started going to the club and just hanging around and just throwing. And we just talked about it before we got on mic that Assiniboine was just so supportive of juniors, come out and spare, get you ice available. Like they had the Saturday junior, it was a Saturday junior program, all that. Yeah. So you weren't playing in school at all, right?
Yes, I was.
There was also a school curling.
Okay. There was school curling. I'm pretty sure Nest Junior High, it was Wednesdays at 4:30. It'd be school curling. So I think that first year I was probably more Saturday junior curling, Wednesday school curling, and maybe a little bit of hanging around the club, but not full on yet.
Okay. Because you're still playing a bit of hockey, like you said.
And curling then didn't start till October, and the curling club burnt down by Christmas time. So there was really only 2 months. That's right. 2.5, maybe 3 months at the most.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mark couldn't really remember the specifics of how that sort of first team got formed. Not with Ron and Jim. So this is like so maybe this is Saturday juniors even? Did you get teamed up with Mark? With Mark Olson? Like Mark was saying there was a moment where there was you and him and two other fellows. So it wasn't Ron and Jim at the time. So in junior, way back in junior. Yeah. And Mark just decided he was going to skip, but then who was the fellow had the two sliders on his feet? So he said, we're going to let Kerry play third because
he's got a better memory than me. I don't recall that. I do remember a little bit that when I was first starting that Saturday junior curling, you kind of, if you're new, you played lead, and you just randomly put on a team.
So do you remember that first team?
No, I don't.
Okay. So that wasn't with Mark then at that time.
It could have been. Yeah. It could have been, but I don't think so. I think Mark might have been a stage ahead of me in that my first year.
He was probably a year or two ahead of you, or just whatever, however the junior thing works. But
we were in the same grade, but he was a year older. But I think he had started curling a year or two before I did, as I recall, and I could be wrong. I don't, I remember little flashes of the junior stuff, but not too much. And then there was sort of a beginners league where you get put on a team. And then I think when Mark and I played, that might have been the next year, where now you have some say in who you play with, kind of thing. And it's not beginner level anymore. It's a little bit more, but there was a lot of kids in junior curling back then. And also I think the first time I sort of got to know Mark was because of Nest Junior High curling, because we curled. Okay. So there's all these kids at junior curling, so you don't really meet everybody, right? But at Nest Junior High, there's a smaller group, and you very quickly realize, okay, there's a few kids that have curled a little bit more than the others. So you pick out who the better curlers are, and we curled together, as I recall. I think grade 9 zones we played together. So that would have been the year after the club had burnt down.
So it was pretty early in your development. So
it would have been my first year of sort of non-beginner curling.
You took to the sport pretty quickly then, I take.
Wasn't. I think it was that second year where I actually was still playing hockey, but like a month in, I quit hockey. because I realized, I wanted to curl. And
So you're like 14 at this point, or maybe even 50, or getting close to.
let me see here. That if I went back in number wise, I graduated grade 9 in 72. So
It's like
I would have probably been at the start of that year. I'd have probably been 13, turning 14 that winter.
Who else was kind of like roaming around then at the time at the Assiniboine? We mentioned a few names already, but was there, in terms of
there
the
was the
crew?
Spencer brothers,
Okay,
Ted and Jim. There was Rob Contafio, who curled with Jim, and Jim went to Sturgeon. So back then you sort of knew the people, or curled with the people from your school kind of thing still at that time. Who else though Gary Herdekant that I mentioned earlier, he was there, but he was a year or two older than me. I don't think Blanche had started yet.
Okay. But they get the new rink built, and you're kind of just there every night then, kind of thing.
Yeah,
at that point, and started.
Maybe the first year again, still not full on, but by the second year, yeah.
This team with Mark then, the schoolboys bonspiel, which wasn't, we're not even talking about playdowns and all that, but that was massive, right? Because it was, like 300 plus teams. It's like the MCA is now, probably bigger than the MCA is now. I don't know, maybe. But it was massive.
It was
right?
over 300 teams at one time, yeah.
You won that what then? Your third year curling or fourth year curling, or pretty soon? It must have been.
That would have been my third year. It's my second full year, but my third year of curling.
You'd gotten a little taller by then, maybe?
Yeah.
Or it was just,
Yeah, I'd started to sprout a bit, but so I was getting closer to average.
And your corn broom sweeping was not too impressive, but adequate?
No, I wasn't too bad of a sweeper. We swept with rink rats, I think, at first.
Okay.
Rink rats and then corn, and then the Mark II cat. I'm not sure if that's the exact order, but they were all in that era.
Well, and Mark was we were trying to remember when the push broom came to Winnipeg, because you guys were probably at the front end of that, do you think?
I know exactly when the push broom
because, Gowsell was obviously the influence in the Calgary, some of the Calgary scene where it started, and I've talked to people about that. Okay, so where did it begin for you guys?
For it began for me, and as far, maybe not the very first one in Winnipeg, but pretty darn close, because there was a summer bonspiel. We had won the Manitoba Juniors in the spring of 78, and then we went to a summer bonspiel in Brandon. It was a big cash spiel, but it's played in the summertime then, and in the arena.
So you won that junior with corn? Playing with corn?
We were using Mark II cats then. And so I went to this bonspiel with Scott Saunders, who I'd played against in the juniors in 78 and become buddies with. And so he flew in, and was him, Blanche, and I think Mark.
Mark mentioned Scott. Yeah. So he was okay.
So it was the four of us. And so, we didn't have any money, of course, because we were young kids. So we camped in Brandon. It was also the year of the beer strike.
Okay, I'd not heard this before.
Yeah, well, Mark probably wouldn't know much about that. But
I've heard about this famous Brandon spiel, even from Paul and his team.
Yeah.
So there was a beer strike. So, okay, who's never lived through one. So does that mean there was no beer?
They were not selling any beer whatsoever.
Who was on strike then?
It's the Associated Beer Distributors.
Okay.
ABD at the time. Like, they were the ones that distributed all the beer to any of the hotels or
So was this
outlets.
just Manitoba?
It was just Manitoba, okay. Yeah. So everywhere else they could have beer. So we arrive at this bonspiel, and of course there's always hospitality, especially this is a men's one, right? This is one of our first men's
You're
spiels.
probably 17, maybe just 18. No, you're probably 18 by that point, maybe?
I was 19.
Yeah, 19, okay. Yeah.
I was 19, and so of legal age.
Yeah.
So we show up and we set up our tent, and lo and behold, this van comes driving down the street, and there's loud noises coming from it, and probably some smoke coming from the windows. And the doors open up, and of course it's Gowsell's team. And they camp like literally across the gravel road.
And you'd not met them before then?
You'd not seen
them or met them. Okay. You knew of them, obviously. I
knew
imagine.
of them, of course. Yeah.
This is just kind of probably at their peak, or even past their peak, because they had 77 was probably one of their better years.
They were
77, 78. Yeah.
Still at their peak. They were pretty darn close. They were winning all kinds of stuff in men's curling. Never mind even though they were juniors, they were still winning a lot
Well,
of
they
cash.
ended
So-
up with the van because they won cars and then sold cars, and that's how they ended up with the van.
So, of course, I think we were throwing a football around or something like that as they pulled up. And sure enough, they right away, we introduced ourselves and we're going on and on about how depressing it is that the beer strike is on. We can't get any beer. Well, Galzel calls me over and I look in the van and all of a sudden he pulls on the rug and there's a trap door and he's probably got about 624s of beer sitting in this special cooler that's in the van. And so instantly, of course, we were friends. And then you fast forward a couple days later. Well, there was only 2 teams that stayed in the campground. Everybody else stayed in the hotel, and there was a hospitality room and such. They couldn't figure out why we had beer, they didn't. And a few days later, we played Galzel in the final of the bonspiel. And this is the first time we didn't play him in the bonspiels. So this was the first game we played against him. So, we're not expected to be in this position at this time because we're just coming off a Manitoba junior boys win, right? So we go out there and we're a little intimidated. Like I think it was Glenn Jackson brought his husky out and had him tied up to the scoreboard. And about the third end or so, the pizza delivery guy came in and they had ordered pizzas out in the ice.
Oh, so they started doing that as a thing after that. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the finals of an event in the Keystone Center, right? And needless to say, the game wasn't all that close. We might have kept it close the first 4 or 5 ends, but it didn't end up being all that close. But after that game, I went from not even thinking about the push broom to switching to the push broom.
Yeah.
And our team did, and
just seeing it like up close and seeing what they were doing with it.
Yeah.
A lot of which by what they were doing is not legal today, but it was legal back then.
Right.
Certain things
we could understand how they could control the rock so much better than other brooms could. Also, being young, you don't even think twice about switching to something you think might be better, right? Like there was no, something's traditional. Do you want to go away from it? So yeah, we literally switched. I know I think the first person or first team to go on the ice at Assiniboine with push brooms.
Okay. Did that anger anybody, or was there any grouchy comments?
Yeah,
there was
a lot of guys, like not in a threatening kind of way, but there was a lot of them that were really looking at me strange. And by that time, like we were already doing well in the men's league, so it wasn't as though we were a surprise to anybody in the Assiniboine Curling Club.
Were you playing in the men's league as a junior team?
Oh yeah,
at the time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we had won grand aggregate and that stuff as a junior team, as I recall. Like, I could be wrong.
Again, which is not like some clubs wouldn't allow that.
No.
They wouldn't even want to have it. Yeah.
No. So that was I'd probably played in the men's league for 1, maybe 2 years before starting, because this is the summertime. So now the year's starting October 1 kind of thing. And we come out there with push brooms. And I think actually in the beginning, the first month or two, I might have been the only one using a push broom on the team. I think my guys took another month or two to
come around.
Yeah.
Now, wait, but you were skipping the team. You didn't have the ability to tell them what to do, or was it it's okay. So I guess you're giving a little insight into you as a skip. A lot of the old school skips, right? If you think about the generation before you, if you're Dogood or Fry, it's like you just throw your rocks and I'll tell you what to do. That was often. Were you? Because I noted that you didn't seem to have that same on ice approach.
No.
And it has shifted. I mean, you look at a guy like Kevin Cooey, where it's a conversation every other shot, which might be too much, but
yeah,
you did come up in that era, right? Where it's like the skip was a skip and everybody else just got in line most of the time.
That was probably more most of the time, but also, and I'm not sure. I saw a lot of teams and ours for sure that, I mean, we were best friends off the ice, right? And so you didn't need to tell people what to do because you're all buddies. You did what you did, and I'd never sort of felt the urge to need to try and be a general kind of thing.
But there were characters like that. Some of the older teams, like I think Oris probably wasn't a guy that you were gonna tell Oris what he should do.
No.
Like, Barry. Actually, I should return back to Barry Fry. He seems like he might have been a little bit more comfortable with it. But I think in the most part, it was you didn't offer, I guess, an opinion to your skip unless they asked. and some of them wouldn't ask often.
Yeah, where our team was maybe a little different because our skip was the same age as third and the second in the lead kind of thing. A lot of guys would curl for somebody for a year or maybe two, that's a little older and more experienced. We took the different route. We just played together, and we were also lucky enough to have some early success that allowed us to do that, I guess. Yeah, so we went about it in a different way. And it wasn't necessarily thought out to be that. It's just the way it was.
Well, some of it I think stems from the skip's personality a bit.
Yeah,
I don't like Paul. Like, here's an example. Like Paul, similar, very successful at a young age. I still feel like Paul was a bit of an on ice general.
Oh, I think absolutely.
And honestly, probably could get a bit hard on his team at times, and maybe himself.
And their team was probably different than our team in the sense of how they were put together. I believe by sort of school tryouts and stuff like that. And so that's quite a bit different mentality, right? You're not necessarily the four best buddies when you start, but you grow to have your relationship together. Where we were closer to being best buddies before we even started. So
Mark graduates out. So at that point, what's your junior team then that you win with? In
my junior team is Greg Blanchard and Ron Kammerlock and Lyle Derry.
And Lyle, that's right. Okay, and then that was. And then, so you didn't have a great trip to Canadians, or what actually happened? That would have been the 78 Canadian? No,
78.
8 Canadians.
78 Canadians. Yeah. We go, and this is our last year, or my last year at least. And we go to Canadians, and we had done really well in Manitoba. We went through undefeated, and they send some people with you, and I don't know too much about.
So there's no coach with you necessarily,
we took Mark as a coach, but he wasn't really our coach. He was our buddy, and so we went, and I think that was what hurt us. There was we weren't kind of mentally prepared for what this was going to be, and as it turned out, we lost to a couple of the teams at the bottom of the records. And we beat the teams that were in the playoff to win it. But it was our inexperience of sort of knowing how to manage your game against some of these teams, because we didn't know any of the teams, right? I think it was the being mentally prepared. We weren't quite. That's what hurt us more than helped us.
Well, the other thing I want to ask you about, because I do think this is fascinating, as I'm coming up, Mark talked to it, and lots of other people I've talked to about you, Kerry. You came through in an era of the sport where, and again, no free guard zone. We didn't need it because there was chaff on the ice, all this stuff going on. But generally, teams would still just play a much simpler game. You had an aggressive style. You evolved into an aggressive style that was known outside of Manitoba even, right? Like, I think, and so I'm trying to figure out, where did that incubate? Like, where did it start? Did you just wake up one day and go, I'm bored of this?
Almost.
And was it in juniors, or did it come a little later, or what?
No, it was after juniors.
Okay, so in juniors, so going at Canadians, your game style was the same as most everybody else. Get up to hit the rocks.
Maybe a bit on the aggressive side, but not as aggressive as what people talk about. And right, and so now, if you want the story about when that started, you got to go forward a couple of years after that, where my first year out of juniors was kind of an interesting year, because I played with sort of a men's team, but I was really still with my junior team because the Canada Winter Games qualifications were that year. So my allegiance was to trying to get to the Canada Winter Games instead of...
So that's a 78-79 season.
Right.
So you're out of juniors, but you're not really fully in men's. You're kind of 1 foot in.
Right. So I played with some buddies in men's, but we didn't go anywhere, and we weren't... To be honest,
no playdowns, no MCA or anything of that, or no?
No,
okay.
No. We lost out of the Assiniboine club, which was fine because...
And then you didn't lose. Then how many more years before you lost out of the club again, or did that ever happen?
No, never lost again in the club. But so that next year we go on and we win the Winter Games. Now we're still playing the game kind of the same way, but we learned a lot at the previous Canadians about, more mental preparation. Not that we did anything about that, but we we experienced it, right? So we were more of an experienced team than we were very rookie-ish, I thought, looking back on it when we went to our first one.
If you flip the Winter Games and the Canadians, you figure you probably win or come close to winning the second one just because of the experience of being at that kind of an event.
Yeah. I think there's no question we could have won that first Junior Canadians if we had a little bit of experience or someone to help us a little bit. We didn't.
Look today how they have the U16s and the U18s and whatever, right? So now these kids are actually getting those kind of different experiences where you steamroll through these zones. You're doing, you're still in school. And then all of a sudden you're at this event. You've never been at anything like this before.
So we achieve our goal. We win the gold medal at the Winter Games, which was fantastic. It was great. I felt sort of bad about the guys that I sort of curled with in men's because, well, they knew I wasn't serious about it. And so now it's my second year of technically men's. And that's when
Did you have to start in C group, by the way? I just wonder, how did Assiniboine work then, or did you?
Well,
your first year.
You did, but
by the way, the C group at Assiniboine back then wasn't that bad. Actually.
That went back a couple of years because we had already been in men's league.
Oh, so you were okay. You didn't have to. Yeah, you didn't have to work your way back up. It was almost like European soccer, right? You'd move up and down through the stages.
I think actually by that time we had done enough in the men's that they just kind of let us in our in our spot. Yeah. Okay. But we did in the beginning. I think we started back in H group or something like that.
Oh, really?
The very first year as a junior team.
As a kid.
Yeah, and worked our way up. You could only jump 2 groups each round. So if you go undefeated, you'd have enough points to maybe jump from H to F kind of thing, and then F to D. And
but that helped you build up your chops, right? For, what you needed late down the road.
There was all kinds of good things about that. Yeah.
Well, I remember I was trying, of course there was Al Bramer, the Colonel, but who?
Jim Lowe.
Okay. Jim. Yeah. There was probably it was funny. Like we talked about the Strathcona Club or the Granite. I don't think Assiniboine had that top tier, but it was just a real deep bench of
Wayne Johnson,
really good local curlers, right?
Yeah. Wayne Johnson went to Canadian mixed. There was the A group was very competitive. Like not competitive in the sense of being top name teams, but very competitive curling. So it was a great learning ground for me anyway. That's the way I looked at it.
Well, and the ice, I think, was a learning ground. And So, okay, we haven't even finished the topic of the strategy. Let's get to that. But I want to ask you this. Are you aware that some people consider you the best bad ice skip in the sport? And I wonder if, are you aware of that as a perception?
I've heard those comments from time to time over the years, and I take that as an honor. To me, in order to be a bad ice skip, you've got to have a team that throws the rock well. And obviously, you got to read it right and do those kinds of things. But our training ground was bad ice.
Oh, the Assiniboine, because part of it is it would the ice itself would shift during the season.
Oh, yes.
And my understanding is, I think it was even Pat Ryan explained a little bit to me, but it was partly you've got where it was with the creek and on that hill, and then you get weather changes. So you might be playing, like sheet 6 or sheet 1 might be different this month than it was last month or last week.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's very true. And then the other part of the learning to play on bad ice is when you played in the MCA bonspiel, you'd play in 16 different clubs and the ice was different every time. You couldn't afford to get behind because, you had to be able to pick up on it quickly and know how to adjust. And of course the curling wasn't 90% curling. It might've been 70% curling, but that was good curling if you could do that on most of those.
Well, that's what even gets me back to, this idea around strategy. So you're on a foreign piece of ice in an event you've never played on, and somebody puts a center guard 2 inches from the rings and you come around it.
Yeah.
And you have played no practice ice. You probably don't necessarily know what it's going to do. Was some of it, looking back on it, were you a little bit too aggressive in your younger days, or it seemed to?
There might have been times that we were, but what it did is it put other teams back on their heels.
They knew if they were playing you.
Yeah.
They were nervous.
And they would change their game, some of them, when they played us, because they were afraid of what we were going to do. They knew what we would do, and then we would do it. That doesn't necessarily mean we made the shot, but they were uncomfortable. We put them in an uncomfortable position. Getting back to that story of how it occurred was kind of strange because so now we go back. So my first serious year of curling in men's, and that's with Mark. And
So you've been playing with Ron and Jim already though for a bit, right? I think
with Ron, but not Jim.
Not Jim. So Jim was a new.
Jim was new. He was one of my best friends, but he had gone to Sturgeon. I had gone to John
And you
Taylor.
never really curled together then
no,
much? Or,
no.
okay.
I mean, you did in some bonspiels and stuff, but so we put this new team together, which was myself and Mark. Now, Mark agreed to play third for me, even though the only time we curled together before was the other way around.
Was there ever in the early moment, was there a time where Jim wanted to play third, or was it never really sort of came up, or at that early?
No, I don't. He might have wanted to, but it was never an issue. At least not to my knowledge, it wasn't an issue. And Ron was like, he was a recruit from the other side of the city. Like it was pretty out there that we would actually get someone from the other side of the city to play in juniors even, so he was a newcomer back when we had our success in juniors. And then of course he was part of the team at the Winter Games as well. And now, so he's still part of the team, and we brought in, he stepped down, or no, he didn't. Yeah, he stepped down to play lead because he was playing second on the Winter Games team, and Jim played second, and Mark's playing third.
Take me back for a sec, because I love how these conversations happen. So who talks to who? How does this, is this all in your head and then it all starts to come out, or like how?
Yeah.
Other sports don't have this. Curling, it's one of those unique things, right? About how this stuff happens. What do you recall of?
Sadly, I don't recall enough about the actual conversations, but I do know that the conversations were driven by myself.
Okay.
So
you were forming this team.
I was forming, and then I was sort of hoping that, some of these guys would come along, and thinking they might. It made a big difference that we had won that Canada Games gold medal, because now that was sort of something that gave me a little extra talking to people about coming to play.
Get to the final of that, Brand, like that wasn't a nothing.
We were in the
final
of the Brandon as well.
And then you had a couple other local success, Spiel success.
Some smaller ones, not bigger ones at that time yet. Yeah. So we go to form this team, and we start our men's career, and Mark's dad, Albert Olson, decides to sponsor us, and we have an agreement where anything we win, I think he gets 20% of anything we win. Well, so one of our first trips that we went on was to Vernon, BC, and play in the Carspiel. And again, we're getting away from the subject of that strategy, but that's okay.
It comes in here at some point, I'm sure.
It's coming in.
Because it's not there yet.
No, it's not there yet.
There yet. Okay.
So we go to this event, and we'd gotten to know Galzel by then. So, he's there, and a bunch of other, like a lot of who's who of curling were there. And
but you're still kind of an unknown. You guys are still not.
We were the unknowns. Yeah, we were these young kids that were probably got a sponsor exemption kind of thing to get into the bonspiel, and got our way paid there and by our sponsor. And, there was guys like Garnet Campbell, Pee Wee Pickering that were playing in this, like they were at the very end of their career.
Well, Matt Baldwin famously loved going to that spiel. In fact, I think he would put a super team together with him and there's a great photo of him, Garnet, Pee Wee, and Northcott. And they went in with that team a few times. Now, at that point, I don't know who's sweeping, and also none of them are. But it's funny. You look at those photos, you look at them, and you go, "Oh, look how old they are," and it's like, "Oh, he's 52." Oh, really?
Yeah.
Always love those.
Yeah. So we will lose our first two games, and it's a triple knockout, and so we're not very excited about how we've done, and I'm not sure either of the first two games were even that close. I remember we lost the second game to a guy named Jack Hockey. So we go out and end up partying with Galzel's team, and probably did a lot more partying that we should have done.
Because you're in C. I mean,
we're in C, and I know we were probably playing at 8 a.m. or something, but whatever. And so we show up, and we're playing this team from BC on the end sheet in the morning, and like they're looking at us like, here's these young kids that have gotten kicked twice. They're 0-2 from Manitoba. It was nice that the juniors sort of showed up, and even though there was a guy like Galzel that had already done all that stuff, right? I forget what his name was, but he was Smale, I think.
Okay.
I think he was a former champion in BC, but he's almost like there was a burnt rock situation. He's sort of telling us, well, this is how it works. And, almost like we didn't know the rules kind of thing. Well, lo and behold, I think, we win a close game barely. Not that we curled that great, but we won the game. And then all of a sudden we win a couple more games, and now we're playing Ed Lukowich to qualify in C. And so we play Ed Lukowich, and we're sorry, no, I got it. Yeah, no, it's Lukowich. So we're down all game, and right at the end,
I thought maybe Luke, was that the semis or was that it to qualify, Ed? I thought Mark thought maybe it was the semis.
One of the stories, maybe it was Sparks then.
You beat Sparks in the final.
Okay, so no, Lukowich.
Mark remembered it, but yeah.
I remember it being Lukowich to qualify.
Okay, yeah.
And so we ended up going into an extra end without the hammer because we made a comeback just to tie it. And
Mark remembered that, yeah, you were down, then stole, did a steal. And
now we're in the extra end, and I think Lukowich had to touch the forefoot or something like that and didn't make it. So we qualified, which was, pretty big comeback after the 0-2 start and one of our very first major events kind of thing. Now we play Jack Hockey again in the eights. He had qualified through A or B, whatever it was that was ahead of us. And we come out in the morning and we play quite well, and we won quite handily, as I recall. And then, so the semis, I can't remember who we played in the semis.
That's why I say Mark seemed to think it was Lukowich in the semi, but whichever. I mean, it was It was a pivotal game against Lukowich. I remember and
that.
you hadn't played Eddie before, or Ed?
No, but we're our starstruck, right? Like
you still, were you? But it doesn't sound. Will you ever, like you mentioned, being maybe a little nervous against Gals in that first final? But
we're starstruck, but not showing it. But in our minds, or at least myself, I was thinking, wow, like this is pretty cool playing against these guys, right? And Bernie Sparks in the final. I remember the eighth end.
And there was no deal, right? Mark confirmed no deal.
There was no deal. Well, why would they give kids?
Well, no, right? Well, I mean, I wonder if you were like, Mr. Sparks, you want to No, that wasn't.
There was no deal.
There was no deal.
No. And to be honest, I might be one of the very only guys that never ever made a deal in a final of any bonspiel.
Yeah, so that sort of got known that it's just don't even bother, because there were lots of guys. Because it's understandable, right? Back in the era when you're putting out your own cash and you're heading off to this bonspiel where first prize is a lot and second prize is not a whole heck of a lot. It's like, okay, well, those conversations would happen.
The only time a deal ever happened with us is actually twice, and they were both the two losers of the semis playing for third and fourth.
Oh yeah.
So one was one of those Bill Hunter events, and it was Stoughton, and we made a deal with him. And then the other was with Lukowich when we were in a Victoria cash spiel. We had both lost.
So they'd make you play like a bronze medal game almost, really, if you will.
So
Okay.
third was worth 1,000 more or whatever, 5,000 more than fourth kind of thing. And the game that we played against Lukowich in Victoria, the corn brooms came out.
Oh,
they hadn't been out for a long time. Like after the game, people upstairs said hardly anybody watched any of the final, which was a boring 2-1 game with Ron Brucker and somebody else.
Yeah. And
our game was like 11-10. We were just having a blast out there, but everybody was making fancy shots.
Oh, yeah.
So it was kind of interesting.
Well, okay. So when did it pop into your mind then? So you win. Okay. So you're in the card spiel. You win. You beat Bernie.
Okay. So we beat Bernie, but the interesting part that I remember from playing Bernie was the eighth end. We were tied, I believe, and he had the hammer, and we're lying one in the top 12 and one in the back 12. So I'm thinking he's just going to draw for one. And he played an outturn, which is kind of the only shot I had always been told that he plays. And he tried to make sort of an across the face double and roll out to blank the end.
What? Okay.
And so instead, he hit it not quite right, and we stole one, which, I mean, in my mind, it was a really low percentage shot. And I guess that's the point where it sort of stuck in my mind that okay, these guys that are famous are human, right? They play shots that are questionable or miss some shots that.
You think he didn't want to draw, or what do you think it was? It was just a strength.
I think
he was just thinking through he wanted hammer.
To keep the hammer. So it's possible that it was the ninth.
Yeah.
It's possible it was the ninth because.
And he's thinking, oh, if I give up one, I can still take two.
He wanted to maintain the hammer. Plus, he was sort of in control. But if he draws for one, he's in control too, especially back in those old rules, right? And so, as it turns out, we stole our one and we win the game and win the cars. And I sold my car to the bartender that night.
Oh yeah.
Mark, I'm sure he probably told the story. He kept it for about a week because we went up to Kamloops. And he traded it on a Toyota Celica.
Yes, he did. You remember the car?
I remember the car. What was Ford Pintos that we had won. Jimmy and Ronnie flew back.
Okay.
To work for 2 days, and then flew back to Kamloops. and back in those days,
were you even in Kamloops when you went to Vernon originally, or were you guys?
Yeah, no, we were. Yeah, the plan. I wasn't working, and Mark.
But you didn't necessarily expect to be defending champs of the previous bonspiel that week.
No.
So in the Calcutta, you went for a little higher that one, or the next one, or
we did go higher, but I'm pretty sure we didn't go highest.
Did you ever partake in some of that, like in those early days? Like it was hard if you're a kid, right?
We didn't have the money to.
Yeah,
we didn't have the money to.
Okay, so what did you take out of that then that changed your idea about strategy?
Okay, so this is where the story is getting long because this wasn't where I changed my strategy.
That's okay. We'll get there.
So we go to Kamloops and the guys fly back and lo and behold, we go through and we play Lukowich in the final and we beat Lukowich in the final of Kamloops. So we won back-to-back events, which
at 20, and now you're 20, right?
So we went from being sort of an unknown team to arguably being one of the top teams in Manitoba.
You're like the next Galsel.
Yeah.
You're like the next Galsel all of a sudden where it's like, where did these kids come from?
Yeah. I'm sure the guys like Fry and Westcott and some of those guys must have sort of thought we were kids, and then all of a sudden now we were maybe equals or whatever you want to call it, or someone they better be worried about kind of thing. So we end up going through this year and we're undefeated through A in the provincials, playing Earl Morris, and we beat him handily. And it was a quirky way the way it worked. So even though we were undefeated, we moved into a semifinal. And it's sudden death semifinal final. And Morris dropped to B event to get a second chance to qualify. And for some reason, he won his game and still played us. So we're playing the same team for a second time in a row.
Yeah.
And of course, the ice in the Winnipeg Arena was just awful. And I had a shot to win the game. I had to tap a rock back in the back eight and stick, and I rolled about 3 inches too far. So now we're going an extra end. They've got the hammer, and I'm way off topic here. But so the ice is such on the center where it falls off with one turn badly, and the other turn is very unpredictable. But very early, they missed a couple shots, and we had them in all kinds of hot water. So we had a rock behind the guards, and I think it was Gary DeBlanc, or was it Claire? It was either Gary or Claire. Threw an out turn. He was trying to peel, and it backed off and then caught straw and hit and stuck on ours that was buried.
So he's trying to peel, and he ends up with a perfect.
So basically, we had no shot. There was no way to get.
He's trying to make a peel.
Yeah,
and it ends up.
Yeah,
just like perfect.
Or he might have been playing like a double raised takeout or whatever, but he was throwing hit weight, and the rock and the ice didn't curl, but he got a big break. So anyhow, needless to say, we were out. So now we go into the next year. Now I'm getting to the story of the strategy.
So even that year, you win the cars, the whole thing. You're still playing you're trying to use the push rooms, I'm sure, as much as you can. You're developing that skill, if you will, but you're still playing you're just nothing unique about the way you approached it.
we were probably more aggressive than some teams, but not for what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We weren't known for aggressive strategy at that point in time. But then the next year we start out and we're on a, going every weekend to Thunder Bay and Saskatoon and all these places. And we get about 3 or 4 spiels in, and we've just had a disastrous start, and we've kind of lost our confidence and things aren't going well. And we're sitting around having a drink and thinking, well, what do we need to do? Like, why aren't we playing as well as we were before? And all of a sudden a song comes on the radio, and it's The Gambler.
Okay.
And no word of a lie, it was at that point in time, hearing that song, that the idea came up with, well, let's just try and be way more aggressive, and our theme song immediately became The Gambler. The very first event we went to was in Regina the very next time, and we're coming in, we weren't doing too well, and we started doing like you said, if they threw it short anywhere, we would go around. We started to have a little bit of success. I don't know, maybe we just were feeling better about ourselves, and then all of a sudden you start to notice that the other teams are, they don't want to throw anything out front. They want to throw it in the house because they're worried. But they would throw it in the house in the first end, and we'd freeze to it. And still, so they were realizing that they can't just get away from that strategy that we want to play. Like, we can force the game. And so I think that event was our first event doing it, and we made the final. We'd lost the final to Les Rogers, I remember. But all of a sudden we said, okay, I think maybe we're onto something here. Like, maybe we can tweak it a little bit too. But
you see it as a team decision. It's interesting you say that, though. Like, you feel like this was a team decision. Like, everybody's buying in.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, Mark actually, I think, credits you a lot more with sort of the development of it and maybe just the approach to it. But okay, but he certainly didn't have this memory. So it kind of was we're down on our luck. We're not really, we're like, what? Hey, we're not having the season we thought we should.
Yeah.
Let's just go for broke. And nobody, like, there were aggressive styles. I mean, even, Paul Savage was famously the round mound of come around, and he liked the draw game and all that. And Eddie Lukowicz, I think, liked to mess it up a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
But were you just another level beyond that? Was there, at that time, like when and maybe it was more of a Manitoba thing, or even you played in these bigger events across Western Canada, you brought a style in a way that was just not, like most people hit the first two ends.
The only guy that would maybe do some of that kind of stuff in Western Canada at that time was Gausel. But
once they got up, they would just clean it up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, and we would... We didn't play, if we were up to, we didn't play that kind of a style.
Yours just more it's from the start.
Yeah, yeah. So you're playing on fresh ice. You got no idea what the weight's going to be, and this is the way we're going to go, and the other team's going to have to deal with it. And
so okay, this I got to understand then. So how would you know as a team or as a skip on this fresh piece of ice, especially you're trying to make a come around? The truth is really hard maybe to get that thing to bury. So if you leave it a little open and they get a hit and roll, now you're behind. Would you even watch the other games or keep an idea on the ice, or do you just have a feel for it? How do you know if there hasn't been a rock down it? That's what was there an innate? Did you stare at the slope? Did you go down and look really close?
I guess technically there has been a rock because the other team throws their rock that got there. So you do see something. Our team watches that, right? But also, too, I think part of our strategy wasn't just to make a come around. Yeah. Part of our strategy was to put more rocks in play. And because no one wanted rocks in play, everybody would just hit kind of thing. And so that was part of at least the strategy in my mind was to force more play that wasn't just straight
and discomfort.
And discomfort.
Like, let's put them in an area where they're uncomfortable.
Yeah. So at that time, most of our curling was just in Western Canada. We were aware of the Werenichs and Savages and all those kinds of guys.
But they came a little later, right? Really, they started coming west. Maybe just right after that.
He was
right
in
after
the 81
that,
Brier.
82, 83, 83.
Eddie was in the 81 Brier. And I didn't know who Eddie was at the time.
Well, he had just really started skipping, right? He had been
I think
playing for Paul, second and third a little bit. But I don't think they'd really developed that game yet. I think, the story was back in the 70s that Paul always liked the draw game.
That's true. I guess the part that we maybe became somewhat known for, at least with some people, was later that same year, we end up winning the provincial, which there's a whole nother story with the game against Blanchard. But when we end up winning the provincial and go to the Brier, I mean, obviously we're still 22-year-old kids, right? And we played Toby McDonald the first game of the Brier. And he just sadly passed away.
Just sadly passed away, actually. Just, yeah.
So we've kind of got this new strategy, but now we're in Nova Scotia and we're in the Brier.
And you used it in the provincials too, though. Playdowns, and did you go through zone or MCA that year?
Oh, zone. Did you? We only went through zones for the first 6 years. We didn't lose a game for the first 6 years in zone. So now, first game, and they threw their first rock and they threw it to the back 8-foot. I called for Ron to.
But Ron knows he's going to do this. This is what I want to ask you.
Yeah,
like,
he knows he's going to do this.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I said, well, let's freeze. I think the other team was taken aback, and Ron made an absolute dead-on perfect freeze. The other team tried to ram it out of there and left it, and then we split the house and traded rocks, and they actually made 8 shots, and we got 2 the first end. You know, they didn't make a double, but they made their shots. And those guys on that team later would tell me that they just were absolutely blown away that we did that, which also reaffirmed that the strategy does what I wanted, part of what I wanted to do, right? That was kind of the long-winded answer to
of getting there. Well, no, it's because it is an evolution, right? I mean, I always wonder this, if whether when the free guard zone came in, whether that helped or hurt.
Yeah.
Because everybody now had to play the way you played. Or at least start to adapt to it.
What helped is by that time, you know, we're now 6 or 7 years later or more, and you've got the Ryan Express and some of these teams that they would hit right from the opening end, and the game would be so boring. And so, yeah, the strategy was harder to do anything by then.
So you'd be playing all these games with more rocks in play, so you'd get more comfortable playing with more rocks against teams who maybe... Yeah. They played 3, 4, 5 games in the bonspiel. They hadn't had a game like this. All your games have been like this. So again, understanding where the rocks are going to go, what's going to happen when you do a thing. You just were probably just that much better and more comfortable in that situation.
We're comfortable and the other team's not as comfortable.
And eventually, though, I think once the free guard zone starts to develop, you got to get comfortable. You have to.
Yeah.
1997, 98, 99, you get into that stage, even before the 4 rock. You sort of had to play with rocks in play. And it's funny how, I don't know that Kevin Martin initially, there was some trepidation out of particularly Northern Alberta, I think at the time. And there was even a letter, I don't know if I've seen it. There's a letter sent explaining why we don't want these new rules coming out of Alberta, which I think is just, which looking back on it is like mind boggling. It's like, wait, who's enjoying this anymore? Even the players like Al Hackner, same way. I'm sure you were the same.
I probably wouldn't have curled too much longer if it didn't change.
Ed Werenich even said he wins the 90 Brier and he won it with those rules and he hated it.
Yeah.
This is no fun. And he was ready to quit, but he did it because, well, he had a good team. They could do it. There's no enjoyment in it.
You know, the ice conditions had gotten better. And so teams could literally run you out of rocks. Like, before that, it wasn't the same, right? They typically couldn't do that, or not on a regular basis anyway. But yeah, no, the evolution of the game, it had to change. It had to change. And of course, with change, there's going to be some teams that don't like it. And some of those teams that really didn't like it, it probably helped them a lot once they were forced to play a little bit different game, right?
And now they're playing you and they go, well, we're comfortable.
Yeah.
So now they're actually playing your style almost. So I remember even reading that one time. I can't remember what it was, or somebody talked about it, that just maybe your advantage, if you call it, was a little bit less. And I think that's probably overblown, but just in terms of putting people in that kind of situation. Well, everyone's in that situation now, so they're just playing you.
Yeah.
Right.
The part that did also change is the game became more fun again too, and that, to me, that sort of
you never wanted to leave. You kept coming.
Yeah.
You play. I mean, you think about your career, pretty much ran the gamut from first stepping into men's and winning a Brier at 21 or 22? 22, barely 20.
Yeah.
How old were you? You were what? 20?
I was 22 in a couple of months. Yeah. Which is still the youngest ever.
You never know. Might hold up. We'll see.
I think it gets harder now as opposed to easier, but I don't know, maybe with less and less teams all the time, maybe it could happen. But
Talk about that semifinal. Mark did chat a little bit about that game. So in that tanker to go, so you're disappointed the previous year. You guys know you feel like you're the best team in Manitoba.
yeah, and we were sort of smarting from the year before, where we felt like we kind of, the way the system worked, and again the systems is the exact same thing again, and we qualify undefeated through A, and Greg comes through B, and I think he had lost his very first game.
And you know these guys well. Like, do you probably play them in the club every...
Yeah, well, Greg and Lyle are on the team. Greg Blanchard and Lyle Derry, who just 2 years earlier we'd won the gold medal together. And Ted Spencer, who is Jim Spencer's brother, is on the team, and a fourth guy by the name of Rick Flemington. And so they don't put anywhere near the same time and energy towards curling as we do. So they're our buddies, but we feel we're supposed to beat them. But
they're not doing barnstorming across the West. They're not doing the road trips event at this point and any of that.
No, they're probably...
But they knew you. They know how to play because they're playing in the club.
Yeah, well, they're not scared of us, no, because they play us all the time, right? And they had been gaining momentum. Like, I'm pretty sure they lost their first game, and then they won and won and won all the way. So they're on a roll, and they've sort of got nothing to lose, I'm sure, in their mind. And they played great, and we maybe were a little off at times, and we're now 2 down playing the 9th end without the hammer, and things look bleak. And so I throw my last rock in 9, and we have a rock kind of at the almost biting the top 8, and a rock biting a little more at the back 8. And so he could have played the double, but it's a long double for one. But he played the draw, and the draw slid and slid, and we had to measure at the back. And we literally got it by, like, maybe a 16th or a 64th of an inch. So we stole one instead of them getting one. So instead of being 3 down coming home, we're only 1 down with coming home.
Yeah.
And then in the next end, we stole again by, hang on, no, that was probably, I might have the order wrong, but we stole on 9 and 10, for sure, 1 on the measure, and another one that was like less than an inch.
Well, Mark said there was one where he didn't know who was shot.
Well, that was the one in the extra end.
And that's the extra.
Where in the extra end, now their team has gotten rattled. They've given up 2 steals. They've blown their lead, and they start to miss a few shots in the extra end. And we have one biting the button, and the ice is pretty straight. And we've got 2 or 3 guards on it. Greg goes to throw his last one, and he's trying to throw a fairly wide draw, and it doesn't really come in that well. I'm not sure, like, I would have probably bet that it wasn't even possible. But he throws a great rock, and it gets by the guard fairly close, and they sweep it, and it's right on the tee line, biting as much of the button as he could have got.
So it's as good a shot as he could probably throw.
Good a shot as he could have thrown, and we don't know who shot rock. And they come out and they measure it, and we got it by like a whisker. What a difference that made. I mean, now we go to the final instead of, we could have had another huge disappointment in our minds of losing that. Obviously, our friends were very disappointed that they lost, but we go on to play the final, and we end up winning, I think, 9-2 in the final against Murray Nye, and went off to the Brier.
When Mark talked about that, just even after that win, because the boys were there to watch you and celebrate with you afterwards, which was pretty cool. Yeah,
they were. Yes, they were. It was very cool. That was something that sort of was always there at Assiniboine, was the support, whoever it was that was playing. Yeah. There was always other people there watching and supporting, which was also hugely important for sure. It's amazing what, 1 or 2 little breaks that can change everything, right?
You mean like getting 3 in the last end? And again, we talk about a game where it's like, oh, you're up 2, it's just easy, you clean things up. And then, not only did you win at Brier as the youngest, you also won it in kind of dramatic fashion, I guess we would say. It's funny how you think about Al Hackner might have been in 2 of the, I don't know, maybe top 5 dramatic finishing games in a Brier ever. Like, he came out on the right end of one of them and the wrong end on the other one.
Yeah, certainly the one he won was quite a bit more dramatic in terms of the shots degree of difficulty and such.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was dramatic. I mean, it was interesting because earlier in the week we played Al and we're tied in the extra end with the hammer, nothing in play. And so Al decided to draw for a biter, thinking that was his best chance because he thought if he got fully in the house, I hit it, he's going to lose. And he makes a perfect shot. He bites the top of the ring. And so I had to throw an out turn, which, as it turned out, it was probably the fastest part of the ice. And we slid about an inch too far. So he stole to win the game, which up to that point, we had done quite well against him.
You won 2 Halifax Briers, which is also kind of fascinating. Which year had the worst ice then? Of which Brier? Like that 81 Brier, what was it? Like you even mentioned, like it was hard to hit the rings.
Yeah, the 81 Brier was probably worse ice, but more consistent.
I don't know if that's a good thing. It's like it falls here, but we know how much it falls.
Whereas the 95 Brier was better ice, but there was all kinds of issues with it rained all week. And so it was creating all kinds of frost inside the arena. And so there was a lot more unknown that was taking place from time to time during 95. After the 95 Brier, I think is maybe when I got that reputation, or maybe it was even before, I don't know. But to me, it didn't seem to be as difficult as what others were making it sound. Like, I think part of it was that some of the other provinces, their ice conditions had advanced a lot further ahead of what Manitoba had. And so they were used to ice that was closer to what we see nowadays.
Which might have been a disadvantage almost.
What might have been a disadvantage for them and might have been an advantage for us. I think that's what their point is. And I think I didn't get worked up about it like other guys did.
You just accept it. I'm on this ice. I'm going to take what it gives
me.
The
ice, I think, in 95 was more decent, but it wasn't great ice. There's no question. And the frost.
And I heard it even changed a little on the ending weekend versus earlier in the week and everything else. They kind of tried to work on it. But
yeah.
All right. Well, 81. Let's get back in 81. So you had this week there. Any other kind of memories you have of that Brier, I guess, before you get to the final? You talked about how you had to get experience in that type of event. It's different, right? It's even different maybe than the Manitoba Provincial because it's kind of a long week, right? You're kind of spread out games and you just gotta pace yourself, or like, I don't know, what was the...
Yeah, well, we weren't very good at pacing ourselves.
Like, it's like, okay, so we got a morning draw or we don't have a morning draw?
We certainly managed to enjoy ourselves as much or more than most teams.
Was Mark sort of the school teacher a little bit, or that he would kind of get...
Sure he would be, because Mark really wasn't a drinker at all. So, I think if he had it his way, we would have been a lot less, but he'd only get little bits in every now and then. And he was used to that. Yeah. Like, we hung out most of the week with Al Hackner's team, and probably one of the stories that I think a lot of people would find interesting is our final. We played Al, I think it was about 3 p.m, because of course we're on the East Coast, which, is a little earlier in the day back home. But so Saturday night, the banquet, which you had to attend back in those days, was arduously long. And we probably didn't get out of there till 11:30 or 12. And then we ended up going back to Al's room for a couple of beers. Well, we probably stayed up till sometime a little later than we should have.
This is the night before the final.
This is the night before we're playing him in the final.
Okay.
And yeah, so...
You think this was a tactic by Al at all? Or is this... No, it was... Because he had a championship belt, I think, at that. Like, there was nobody could party with Al and then still win the bonspiel. He was pretty... I kind of felt like... Did you think?
He definitely was a heavyweight in that department.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you guys, what you're saying is you were a strong middleweight.
Well,
you guys felt like
we were certainly the young guys that were willing to participate. Anyway,
but you got to be careful, because had you heard famously about the stories in 80?
Oh,
about him and Galzel going toe to toe, and
we knew all about that.
The stories about how Galzel's door was locked a few nights later.
Yeah.
So I wondered about this. I think Al just enjoyed the sport, but I think, did Al take that as a badge of honor of, we're gonna have a good time here, and I want you to have a good time too, and then I'm gonna meet you out on the ice. And I wonder if that was always like, I think the social aspect of the game was important.
Oh, absolutely.
But on the ice, was he different on ice or off ice, I guess is the question.
Oh, he was definitely different on the ice. He was the Iceman, right?
And so that came through. So like you go to shake hands. Did he seem like a different person from
well,
like an hour before?
No, he would to people watching him, but he wasn't different in the sense where he was would brush you off or anything. He just, that was his way.
He's just in quieter. Would he get quieter a bit, or he was
he was very quiet and seemed very serious, which you would think would make sense.
What was the bedtime then the night before? That final?
It was probably somewhere between 3 and 4 in the morning.
And who got who to bed first, or was it you recall, or it gets a little blurry at 3 or 4 in the morning?
We're not quite sure. Well, we did leave Al's room, so
they might have still been going.
They could have kept going. Yeah, okay. I certainly don't know the answer.
They might have gotten a little worn out by the 10th end. Then it might have that's what happened.
It's possible, but we had already been pretty good friends with them. So our two teams.
You played them in all the spiels.
And we were still young, but we were only 4 years younger than they were. So we're 22, they're 26. So it's not as though there's a major gap there. And we had gotten along with them quite a bit. We had probably played each other at least half a dozen times before then, even though we were still pretty new on the scene. But so that was, I thought, a pretty interesting part of the.
I'm thinking too, so that would have also been, I think, the first Brier final all push broom, because you've got Folk the year before.
Yeah.
And then you had Fry the year before that in 79. And then you had 78 was the first push broom with Chernoff that in the final, but that with and Lukowicz. Interesting. You didn't hear, there was no pounding, right? In that one.
No.
The game was pretty tight, tense, I think. I've watched it now because we got a copy of it and recently put it up on YouTube. Have you rewatched it lately, or have you ever?
Not lately. I have rewatched it a few times over the years,
because I don't know if the first 9 ends are all that. It's
no.
What does it feel like?
Probably the biggest part of the game. I think it was about the 7th end. We had Al in all kinds of trouble, and I made the mistake of hitting a rock and sort of sitting in a spot that gave him a chance for an out, and he of course made his fantastic shot and got out, which at that time looked like it was going to be our last chance kind of thing. But then things happened in 10 like they did, and it was pretty unique.
You do not have the same vertical today, I imagine.
Definitely not. Definitely not. In fact, the only two times I showed that vertical was that game in 81, and then the final of the Worlds in 95. It's the only other time where I think I actually physically left the ice.
Oh, man. What are the memories of that Worlds then? Actually, it was funny. Maybe you can confirm it. Mark seemed to think that if you had been undefeated, because I was looking at that record and you lost that last game, and I initially sort of assumed, you lose the last game, it didn't matter. But he was under the impression if you'd actually gone undefeated, you would have had a bye to the final.
That was in 81, yes.
In 81, which kind of an interesting rule. So that last game actually did matter a whole lot.
It did matter.
Your opponent was
Sweden.
A little sauced.
They brought out corn brooms. I'm not sure they had used them all. I think they had used them during the week, but not all the time.
Okay.
And I believe it was our first morning game of the week. And we definitely weren't.
But I heard they might have even been partying a fair bit because they were out of it. They weren't even in the.
Yeah. Oh no, exactly. And so they beat us, which then forced a semifinal. And that was one where the ice went from being to our liking all week to something completely different on the weekend, and didn't work to our advantage at all, which was kind of interesting considering we were playing in Canada, and it was. So I don't know what happened, but
in your mind, I kind of always sort of wonder that. Even then, the Brier was the thing, though, wasn't it? I mean, I'm sure it was disappointing.
Well, we were these young kids that had won the Brier, so I mean, clearly we're on top of the world, and we were treated like kings for the whole week in London, Ontario. It's almost like we're treated like rock stars, really.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And we'd be invited to different curling clubs every week with open bar tabs, and it's everything was.
And you didn't say no. Then it sounds like
we certainly didn't say no. No, and I mean, it's not that we were crazy or out of hand, but certainly we enjoyed it a lot more than the teams would nowadays.
Yeah, I think so.
Which, all in all, I'm so glad that we did our stuff when we did and not now, because I think there's so much about the game back then that was better than it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the
The experience of it.
Well, the professionalism too has shifted it to such a way where it's just partially too. You look at all the movement of players too. I don't think teams are formed and succeed in the same way around friendships as they used to. That's
no. Well, I mean, it's a totally different sport. I mean, when we played, there was 36 teams at Assiniboine trying for 3 spots to get out of the club. And then you go to a zone and you try and win your zone. And then you'd go to the provincials and there's 32 teams again in the provincials, with like now you don't even have 32 teams in Manitoba to play, so.
Well, Mark Franklin made his way there. I don't know if you know that. He got back in.
If it wasn't for guys that are seniors
a little
and older,
past their time,
they wouldn't be able to fill the 32 team field, I don't think, which is too bad. I think it's really sad. Things have gone a different way. The demographics of curling, the numbers just aren't there anymore, right?
Well, and you were there through it all because you came up through that sort of the original. Because I do think the 70s, there was something special about. And again, I didn't even live through that because I was a kid, or too young. I was 8 in 1980. But that 70s curling seemed to almost was bigger than it is now. In some ways, from a Canadian perspective, certainly it's not. It doesn't have this Olympic glory, doesn't have this broader piece of it. But in Canada, and if you think about just what's the value of a car, and then what would that be today, right? Like many years later, the money in the sport, the CBC Classic, all that going on. You just came up as a junior in that, and then came right out of it into the 80s as that was happening. It was big.
I think one explanation kind of is that was the age of the baby boomers, right? And the baby boomers have changed so many things as they've gone through life. And I think curling was booming a lot to do with the baby boomer effect.
That's how you had 360 junior teams in a junior bonspiel.
Yeah, exactly. Now, and then they don't even exist anymore because they couldn't get any teams. But I mean, things change over time, but the sport itself has survived, which is great.
There's a few ways to go after this. So first, I guess, is just, so I understand like Ron took a step away for a bit the next year.
Yeah, Ron was getting married. He had a full-time job and, was moving on with life. We had this opportunity to, as Team Canada, to go and play the next year with a little bit of sponsorship. Back then, there wasn't much.
Yeah.
But
what would you get as a defending Brier champion?
It's kind of laughable now, but I'll bet you we didn't get more than we got 10,000 from Labatt's to be our title sponsor, and I'm not sure we got another 10,000 at all from anybody else. So we were somewhere between 10 and 20,000 as our sponsorship. But where you did really benefit was virtually most of the events we went to paid our way to come. And back then the events were all bigger in fields, right? So they had more funds to do that kind of thing. I'm not sure they still do those kinds of things anymore.
I mean, most of that sort of circuit of bonspiels got sort of swallowed up by the slams, right?
Yeah,
in a way.
That's
I mean, it's good and bad, right? I mean, everybody wanted this kind of model, right, with the players and establishing all this. And I mean, you're a big part of the boycott, trying to create a tour for yourselves.
Yeah.
But in a way, it kind of, and maybe it's the way it evolved. So the Besborough disappears, the Welton Beauchamp. They had names to them to the point where that was an event. People would plan a year around it, and the community itself almost was really involved. Now, here's the thing. Some of that's nostalgia because I don't even know if it would exist anyway.
Yeah, I don't think it would, because at the same time, the number of participants was dropping year by year, and not because they didn't like curling. It's just the way the demographics were going.
Yeah, and it changed.
Yeah, so that was all happening. All those things were happening at the same time, and
so Mark explained to me how he found out he wasn't on the team anymore, and it's still a little bit murky in his mind.
Okay.
All he did remember was I was in Europe, and I saw it on the cover of the Curling News. Is that how you remember it? Was there another conversation or something that had happened, or was it? What do you recall?
To be honest, I don't actually recall exactly how it happened, and I certainly don't remember anything about being on the news where he didn't know about it. But
I was even wondering, how did you get a copy of the Curling News? Because he was in Europe that season, so that was the second season. That was Mel Logan, and I don't even
so
know how that happened, but
I'm not sure what he'd have been doing in Europe.
Oh, he was coaching at the juniors with Mert, right? I think.
Okay.
And then he was doing some coverage with the women's worlds, and he was there and the men's worlds. So he did some stuff in Europe for radio. He was telling me about that. So that's the way he sort of remembered hearing that he wasn't around.
To be honest, I don't really recall how that transpired.
You tell me you don't remember how your team kind of split after that?
Well, you got to remember there was also the split that was year 2 of a split because
Ron had already left,
right, and John Allardyce came in, and so then we had a year with John, and the year didn't go anywhere near as well as we had hoped. I mean, we did a lot of traveling and those kinds of things, but we had a lot of disappointments too. So by the end of a long year, you've spent a lot of time together and it's been a lot of frustration, and we were back to a place of less confidence than we were previous. And to be honest, I actually don't really recall exactly how it transpired.
But you did kind of blow things up, if it will, or just sort of like start fresh again. It was like
yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I think in a way too, you had played with Mark a lot, because usually there is sort of a lifespan to teams, right? I mean, it's 5-6 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And particularly if you've got certain personalities. I mean, it's funny. Mark's very self-reflective of, Kerry's kind of an even-keeled, level-headed, quieter guy. He goes, I'm a little more this. And, so he was like looking back on it.
That would be accurate. Yes.
I mean, I did ask the question because, again, I'm a kid from the Assiniboine.
Of course.
I'd heard, was there a woman involved? And he goes, well, there was my ex-girlfriend who called me and said, is it okay if I date Kerry? So he did tell me that story, but he didn't reflect on that as being part of it. So that wasn't.
No, that certainly wasn't part of it.
It is. I mean, it is a thing though. You think about it, you are kids in a way. You're like 21, 22.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Because I do feel like in a way that team that won 81 and, as you say, won cars, and you had a great team.
Yeah.
And then it just, Ron leaves, and then it just sort of like.
Well, basically that was the last time our team played.
You wonder if that team had stayed together, and maybe it's hard to say because maybe it would just all not work.
Well, it's just life. Life takes you in different directions, and Ron had made a decision.
By the way, $20,000 sponsorship doesn't really keep it together, even if it's not the same anymore. In this day and age, your team would have the funding, the cresting, all the stuff you'd have. Like it'd be
none
it
of
might
that.
actually be harder to split up, although that hasn't stopped a few guys.
Yeah. Oh no. No. Like things had changed in part 1 when Ron left, and I mean we were all very disappointed because here we were on the precipice of starting something really successful, but he was ready to at a different stage of life, moving on already. So.
Well, it's interesting. Talk about Jimmy and Ron for a sec then, because, and it's interesting, right? A lot of times people dismiss the lead, I think, a little too much, particularly in that era, right? Where it's the guy that carries the brooms, right? Ron, it sounds like, was a bit of a glue guy on the squad.
Oh, very much so. Ron had a bubbly personality and was lots of fun and had a hilarious laugh and, obviously a great curler, but he was definitely a glue on the team. There's no question.
Yeah. What was Jimmy like?
Jimmy's a little bit more fiery, but not. I
always love. Everybody always says that about somebody who's a little. Well, there's a little fiery. Like
no, he wasn't. He wasn't. Little is a proper description.
Okay, yeah.
Like he was more. He would be a little bit more of the feistiness on our team, but it was only a little bit. But we needed some
little intensity. Yeah,
we needed some.
Because you're pretty cerebral, I think, right? For the most part.
Yeah, I as people saw, I really didn't express emotions. I would have emotions going on inside, but I just really didn't express them. Mark was more of a spark plug in his personality, right? Where Jimmy and I were probably the closest in terms of like we had been close friends for
room together and all.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of the description, and so to lose Ron, we lost kind of like you say, a bit of the glue that was there, and then we got John, who was a great guy, but the next year just didn't go as well as we wanted for whatever reasons they didn't. Maybe it was everybody was gunning for us that previous, maybe they weren't.
Okay. I'm going to run through a bit of this too. So 82, Mel Logan. Still not quite sure how that happens. But again, we've talked about the ice in the Winnipeg Arena, and just generally and there's a lot of teams.
Oh, that has a lot
and like
to do
you say,
with it.
There's no round robin. It's just you have a little bad break here or there. It's gone.
It's the ice was an equalizer.
Lloyd Gunlickson. What happened to you that year in Lloyd Gunlickson?
Lloyd Gunlickson.
I'm just saying, we're throwing some names out here. And Lloyd wasn't a young man at this point in 83, that squad. So they win out of the Valley Road. They win in 83.
Yeah. Again in the Winnipeg Arena.
You got 84 is Riley, 85 Bubs. Okay, we got 86 Riley again, 87 Fowler. You just have this magical early run, and then if you'd have said to yourself, "Gee, it's going to be this long before I get out," I guess you'd probably, as a Manitoban, wouldn't be surprised because this just doesn't happen every year, right? It was hard to get out.
Well, especially like Manitoba was very deep at that time.
Yeah,
like you could easily.
That's why Lloyd Gunlickson got. Well, sometimes weird things happen.
Well, and Lloyd Gunlickson, he won 3 Canadian seniors in a row, right? So it's not completely out of left field, right?
You think about, remember when Norm Houck and Jim Ursel, their senior team, they played Vic in the final in 92.
Yeah,
if you remember, yeah.
There was, and it's a lot of those years, not every one of them, but a lot of those years, they had some conditions that were extremely challenging. But what that ice does is it makes it to much more equal, because you can't very easily try and force teams into a more aggressive game. So that ice was not conducive to our team playing our game.
Did anyone ever? I always wondered this. Any of the players ever go, "Hey, can we not go to the Winnipeg Arena once in a while and play, like find some better ice?" Or was it? Or did people in Manitoba just accept that this is the way ice was?
To be honest, I think it had a lot more to do with who was making the ice than it did with the facility, because you get into the 90s and Hans.
You got Hans, yeah.
He gets the helm, and all of a sudden the ice starts getting a lot better, and then we're still in the Winnipeg Arena.
Same building, but it's better.
Yeah. And there was attention being paid to the rocks. Like back in the 80s, there was none of that. There was no attention being paid to the rocks in terms of the MCA side of things, trying to correct anything.
And it was this is a point where players are starting to pay more attention to the rocks. I think during the Corn era, I mean, there was different conversations about, I've heard, but it wasn't as, because there was so many other factors. Now all of a sudden, push brooms are out. There's no chaff. That running surface is pretty critical to what happens to that rock.
You're getting into the late 80s and early 90s before you really saw a lot of attention on the rocks.
Well, yeah. Would you guys even test rocks at some point? That probably came.
Oh,
yeah. When did you guys start doing that?
I don't recall exactly when we started doing it. I would say we were not as big on doing that as a lot of the other teams were. Whether that worked against us or for us, I'm not sure. And maybe it was partly because of the conditions that we a lot of times played on, where you couldn't really tell.
Is it going to fall 2 feet or a foot and a half?
Yeah, or just kind of have a quirky way on the way down.
Did you start to wonder if it was going to happen again at some point? Or I'm trying to remember too back in that era. What was the squad? You pretty much had the same squad through the 80s for the most part? Or
no, not really. It changed. But it would change like one player or
because Don came in 88, right? Or was that his first year?
Yeah. Like he actually came in to replace Jimmy, who had gotten a job and had to quit curling. Like one of the things that I think I said at a banquet for being inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame or whatever was up until I think 2001, I literally had only played with about 12 different guys over like a 20-year span.
And Dale Duguid had played with a few more than that, probably in 3 seasons.
Probably a couple more during each season.
In one season, he'd play with more than 3.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times when a change was made, it was back to somebody that played with before, right? Like Jim and Ron and Jeff Ryan, and a bunch were in and out a few times, and not virtually every time they were out, maybe not 100%, but I'll bet you 80 or 90% of the guys that left because they chose to leave because they had a change going on in life, or they just didn't want to do the circuit like we were doing, or those kinds
and you
of
never
things.
slowed down.
No, I was very slow at getting into real life.
You worked for Arnold for a number of years, I think, right?
Yeah. And basically just worked part-time. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the trigger then? Got you into the financial advisor business.
It was something that I did have an interest in a lot earlier, and had actually been approached in my more early 20s, and probably because I'd had some notoriety, they thought, back at that time, they hired a lot of people that were from the sports world, right? I was interested, but I chose not to at the time. And so now we fast forward a number of years later, and, probably most of my friends now are moved on and have careers and doing things. And so it was time for me to, and I was kind of getting to the point, well, I know I need to figure out what I'm going to do.
So when was that? How old were you?
I was probably close to about 29 or 30. So I made a decision to take the Canadian securities course on my own, like not through a company, just paid for it and did it myself. And with the idea that, I'm going to do this and see how it goes. And so I did that and got through it. And I did that while I was doing my other stuff, the curling and whatsoever.
Right around that late 80s or mid to late 80s. Yeah. Okay.
So when I was doing the course and coming to the conclusion of it, that's right when the market crashed. 1987 happened.
Okay, the savings and loan and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I guess, my timing was kind of interesting. Like it's not that I gave it too much thought one way or the other. It was certainly not like I planned it, but as it turned out, it was probably a good time that next year for me to get into the business, because there were a lot of people that were disillusioned, and out of turmoil is opportunity, right? That's kind of the time where I guess I felt like it was time to get more serious with life, and I got a job.
Now you had to balance curling with this, though.
Yeah, I definitely cut back on the curling, but I kept curling. Also, too, they saw it as being good that I did curl because that's where my name was, right? And just like there was guys in the business that were CFL football players and things like that. So they thought at that time, it was before you had to be a university grad, so to speak. Although that was at the start of it, because there was a stack of applications like that had university degrees, and there was my one there. And fortunately, they wanted to hire me. So I went in there in my one suit, which was a yellow shirt with the skinny tie and the sort of a disco.
I don't
kind
see
of
that picture on the wall anywhere. I said it's not up with the Patty. We got to get that picture up there, and the early work days. So the passion to curl would never really wane. I mean, it's just let's start to.
It didn't.
It's like I can't work for Arnold my whole life. I got
right, exactly. And I maybe in the back of my mind, I always sort of knew the time was going to come. So the timing, as it turned out, was pretty good, and and I spent the first few years where I sacrificed a little bit in the curling, got my business going, and I guess moved on from there, so to speak.
I want to ask you about the MCA, because this is always only when I talk to Manitobans, right? It's kind of a unique conversation. Are you even aware of how amazing your record is in the MCA? Was it a case, though, where if you got dropped down in other events, you probably maybe would give up here and there, especially when you start working and it's a little hard to stay with it? How did you treat the MCA, and did it change over the years, I guess? Because you had a lot of success.
Yeah. No, we did. And actually a bunch of them we went into already having our spot.
Yeah. Well, this is why I was even asking about the zone.
Well, of course, a lot of those too were happening, and I wasn't necessarily too much into a working career just yet. We always treated it like, well, I shouldn't say we always treated it. There were certain years where we knew we weren't going to play as much, and we would tell the guys at the Calcutta that...
Because you never bought yourselves then necessarily, did you? Or
very
even
rarely,
at that point later? Okay.
I don't recall ever buying ourselves. It was usually Charlie Copeland that bought us pretty much every year. So
Were you the wild card usually right off the top, or was it a
Most of
bring
the
it later?
time, yeah. Except the years, of course, where we said, well, we're not going to play
Okay.
past 8 games, and so the earlier on times were more when we played more seriously, and we had a number of times where we played 16, 18 games.
It's a grind. Maybe that's
Oh,
why you
yeah.
had so much success, is that you were young and of
Yeah.
course you probably would not party so much. Oh wait, no, that probably
No,
no.
certainly wasn't
Yeah.
the case. That wasn't the case.
And that was part of the atmosphere of that event.
Yeah. Oh, for sure it was.
You're not going to slog through all this if you're not enjoying it.
Yeah.
And back to your teammates and mentioning how few people you played with. I also feel like in your case then I'm going to enjoy the people I'm with here. As much as I want to win and I'm competitive, I'm going to enjoy this. I want to be good. I want to be friends with the people I'm with. Was that a big part of it for you?
I think a lot of that happened just naturally. The era we were in, I grew up in the era where you had to play with guys from your own high school and your own junior club and, that kind of thing. And it came very naturally to me that I stayed close to people that I got along well with. And then once in a while, there'd be someone like Ron that I would meet in all these events and loved his company and would bring in a guy like that, or Rob Meakin. And that's kind of how those were very few, but that's how they happened. It wasn't that I would go out and say, okay, well, this person is the very best curler. This person is a good curler and I really like him.
Have you ever spoken to Dave about this? So Neto and Dave shared with me that he took that approach. He feels like when him and Randy formed a team, he said, I want my team to be like Kerry's. I'm not I want good shooters. I get that. Everybody wants good shooters, but that's not the priority. I want to build a unit. Has he ever told you that?
I don't think he's ever told me that, but before they formed their team, when he made the decision to move to Alberta, he phoned me to see if there's any chance there might be an opening on my team. And, and at that time, it was a legitimate thought for some of the other people, because Jeff Ryan, you never knew from one year to the next whether he'd go one more year.
And Jeff's a little bit older than you, right? Too, I think.
No, he's the same age.
Okay,
he's the same age, but
he just always seemed older. He was just
well, he turned gray pretty early.
I know it happens.
But he was same age, and he wasn't as motivated for as long as I was. There was some thought, like, how much longer is he going to play, kind of thing. It was getting close to the end of when Jeff and I curled together that Dave did call me, and I don't think I said anything to him right on the phone. I think I phoned him back and said, no, that, Jeff's confirmed to me that he's going to play. And
then lo and behold, 3 years later or whatever, 4 years later, you're in the final.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he made a shot that Randy didn't want him to throw, which, again, that might have changed everything for them. You know how you have that one point in time where something could change things. If he doesn't throw that shot, we might win the game. But he threw it and made it, and it was an incredible shot.
So we're into the 90s now. Kind of a strange heyday. Curling was still had this pretty strong Canadian appeal, this new guard zones coming in, all this.
Yep.
Eddie was still pretty prominent as a character in the sport. Oh, sorry, we jumped ahead of it, though. What happened in the 87 trials with you guys? I was trying to remember that.
87 trials, yeah. Well, that was the sort of my first foray with dealing with the CCA and Curl Canada.
But Warren was around in 81, I think. He was still, but it wasn't.
Oh no. But I mean, in terms of, they invited me to come and participate in the trials as an individual. And Mark Olson was one, I guess. Al Hackner was one.
But Al declined, though.
Right. Oh, no, I know. No, they invited us, but I declined as well.
Okay, so I didn't remember that. Okay.
Yeah, so I told them that either you invite my team or I'm not coming, because I don't believe in your theory that you can build an all-star team of you choosing people. It was against every belief I had for my whole curling career. And so Al was much the same way. So the same weekend they were playing the trials, Al and I were playing in an event in Thunder Bay.
Okay, yeah.
And making a big joke of that. And actually our team ended up, I think we won the event for 10 grand or something like that, which we were quite happy with. And we also watched all the so-called all-star teams do very poorly at the trials and got a little bit of satisfaction out of that. So, I mean, basically that was the first boycott, I guess. That's also the same time where they invited Eddie's team, but they made them go on this weight loss thing. And
So you skipped out entirely. Like I'd forgotten that because Al talked to me about it as well. Did you and Al ever chat about it, or even? Well, you must have during that bonspiel.
We didn't. Yeah, we chatted about it after we had made our decisions. I don't recall whether we didn't chat in order to make our decision.
Put yourself back in at that time. Did you imagine where the Olympics would then start to change the sport and where it would end up now, or did you ever even think of it as an Olympic sport, even as a kid? Or
oh yeah, no, I thought it was pretty serious opportunity, but in my mind, I was not interested in them telling me who I was going to curl with.
So that's like your first boycott in a way.
Oh, it was absolutely, and we were both, Al and I were pretty proud of it actually.
But you wanted it to be an Olympic sport, like you felt.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
wanted to support it and support the players.
Absolutely,
yeah. Even before we get to 95, I meant to see Terry Bronstein yesterday, but of course my flights got all messed up. He was one of the originals trying to form the players associations and try to get some sort of that going. And then of course there was the evolution with Lukowich, and Ed told me about licking envelopes and sending them across the country. So what was your early involvements in some of this? And I know Arnold got quite involved, obviously, and was a big part of it. What was your early involvement in this?
Well, I don't remember exactly the year I got involved, but I got involved, and I was involved for at least 2 or 3 years. And as Kevin Martin reminded me, I guess I was president at one time.
Oh. You don't quite remember that?
No, this is part where, like, to me, I was just doing what I thought made sense. It didn't create a time in my memory that I made this conscious decision. I was just doing what I thought made sense and trying to help out. And so I was part of it for a few years, and we were trying to improve things and do things. So I guess in some ways it was part of the birth of the players.
Yeah, when about was that you got? Was it?
This would probably be somewhere around that early 90s, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the specific year. Had
the conversation started too then about the Brier itself? I know it didn't happen until 2002, but were players saying, hey, like we got to get more sponsors in this game. We got to get more opportunity. And
players were upset for a long time.
There was a lawsuit. It was funny. I remember reading about this in one of the old curling news, that there was actually a lawsuit even years before the boycott that had, do you remember that?
No, I don't.
That had sort of fallen short.
I mean, that had been something that had been talked about, but of course the players didn't have an organized voice, right? You know, the Players Association, part of that was to try and have an organized voice to, accomplish some things.
Of which apparently you were president of that at one point, or at least the region.
I was president of that and forgot. Yeah, that's the problem with getting older. You tend to forget things. Yeah, so I was involved with that for a few years, and I know we made a few strides forward, but it was, I think, a lot more strides forward to do with the tour than anything else. Trying to get the tour a little bit more organized, and we didn't really, as I recall, have any specific things that we talked to the Brier people about.
Two things were always big was schedule and sponsors. Schedule being even at a regional level, like, look, can my zones not be at the same time as a bonspiel that we want to draw attention to? We want to bring more fans. That was always my understanding too, is a big part of it. And then of course, a fellow by the name of Merv Bodnerchuk comes around and even wants to take it to the next level. And now we're jumping ahead a little bit, but what's your first memory of Merv? I want to know.
You know how when your mom says, if you don't have anything nice to say, you shouldn't say anything at all? That's about what I'll have to say about Merv. And that was from day one.
What was the name of your team again? You guys were the
New York Knights.
The New York Knights. Okay. Well, had you been to New York at that point in your life?
No, I had not. And the only reason I was involved is because Bill Hunter was involved.
Okay, tell me about Bill.
Well, Bill was the guy that, like he was known in hockey circles and stuff like that, and he was a promoter. And then in the 90s, he got involved in curling to a certain degree, and he was trying to take curling and
even a little before Merv then.
Oh, way before
Merv, yeah.
Yeah. And so he sort of created a different version of the original slams. They weren't called slams back then.
Well, the first players, I think they kind of view the VO Cup as the first players.
That could be. But to my recollection, Bill, for a few years there, had at least 3 or 4 big events that he put on and tried to get organized more as a circuit. and they were great events. Like a few of them were held in Saskatoon and Regina and a few other places. And then from there was the idea of the Edmonton Mall big tournament, which then as far as I know, at some point in time, Bill Hunter, and I don't know when Merv came in there, but he came up with this idea of selling franchises, and that was the only time I sort of involved with Merv for one weekend. You know, we thought, well, these other teams are participating in this because Bill's in it. I'll agree to participate.
At this point, you're established in the financial industry, and I think he had been removed from several exchanges in Western Canada at that point. I don't know if you knew that at the time, or he was.
I certainly wouldn't have known it, but it wouldn't have been hard. Wouldn't have been much of a stretch to guess. Being involved, like I wasn't involved in any kind of a ownership way or anything like that. We were just participating in this event.
You won the Edmonton Spiel, didn't you?
We did.
Yeah,
we won the 2 or whatever league games in the. So we went undefeated that weekend. Technically won the one and only event as the New York Knights.
Okay.
And won the World Open as well.
You still have the jacket?
No.
It's missing.
It's missing in action.
And did you get paid for it? Did it ultimately get paid out for that, or was there some stuff that went on?
I believe we did.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot of money involved at that stage. It was something that if it worked out, it was going to become bigger. But the World Open was separate, right? They just used the same facility because the facility was already there and the teams were already coming. So yeah, there was very minor money involved with the first aspect. And then it was a $30,000 first prize, I believe, for the Edmonton Open, but that wasn't involved with Merv.
They went back there, right? You saw that for the club championships. Kevin Wozniak's son played in it.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was. They were in the mall.
Oh, okay.
The Curling News posted a few little flashbacks of that back in that era. I think it's the first time since.
Yeah.
Do you have any memories of playing in that facility, or just?
Yeah, it was another one where the ice conditions were a little interesting because, of course, you have the sun coming through the glass, and yeah, so
just added to the legend, Kerry, of your skill
at
reading
I
ice.
Guess so. And I remember that was where the poster with all the Canadian champions was born, where they brought them there, and all of us signed like however many, 300 or 500 or whatever it was of them, and in fact, is it around here? I don't know if I have it up. I guess not.
We kind of skipped over 95, which I guess, well, before you got there, was there a moment like you ended up 5-4 in provincial finals, but you'd had kind of disappointments, right? And I remember because I'm a kid at that point, and I'm cheering for you, right? Because I'm a kid from the Assiniboine, and like you had a lot of fans, Kerry. I think you did, right?
Oh, absolutely, we did.
And so it seemed like, is this going to happen again? Did you start to wonder if this was going to happen again? And what was that? I was trying to say, what was the 1 year there in the arena? Well, the year Orist won seemed like a year that is a year here or there, or it just seemed like, oh, this is Kerry's year again. Like, did it seem like that? Like at some point, did you start to feel like Rory McIlroy going to the Masters?
That's an interesting analogy.
Or any of Rory's last 40 Grand Slams.
I wish I got a couple of his paychecks.
Yeah, it would make losing a little easier, wouldn't it? Yeah.
We had many opportunities where things could have happened for sure. And there were few reasons why some of them didn't happen that were maybe, along the lines of ice related, which, is kind of interesting because supposedly I'm supposed to know how to navigate that.
Yeah, we seem to be contradicting that in the first time.
The interesting story of 95 that probably hasn't been told too much is that was the first year for our team with myself, Jeff Ryan, Rob Meakin, and Keith Fenton.
So that was year one?
That was year one.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to remember that. Okay.
And of course, I'm also working, so I'm not playing quite as much because I'm now, been in the financial industry for a bit. So we played about 4 or 5 events, which is still a reasonable amount between October and December. And we basically had zero luck whatsoever. Like we were just getting decimated everywhere we went. So then we played in zone playdowns in December, and we were playing at Deer Lodge. and we were on our last leg in our zone. And at that point, we had dropped down to be.
Or when did zone take place?
This is December of 94.
So December 94, and you're like, this is another lost season.
It certainly is looking that way.
Yeah.
And so we played John Bubs in the zone, which is kind of unusual that we play someone like that in the zone. And we're on sheet 1 at Deer Lodge. We were up 7-1 after about 5 ends or 6 ends, and we end up losing the game. And I literally walked off the sheet straight down the stairs at Deer Lodge, grabbed my bag without changing, up the stairs, into my car, in my curling stuff. And I'm driving home to St. Andrews and feeling really dejected because not only had we had a horrible start to the year, but now this happens, right? And this knocked us out.
Knocked you out, yeah.
I mean, unless the MCA, we don't even make the provincials. So I'm driving home, and I very vividly remember I'm going down McPhillips, and I'm going over the overpass of the perimeter, and I'm just thinking to myself, geez, I could just turn a little bit to the right.
Oh, it was that, like, you're that dark.
Yeah,
at this point.
obviously I wasn't going to do that, but I did think that because that's how low I felt in curling.
At that point, you'd won, for all the success, you'd won 2 Purple Hearts.
Yeah.
And you'd been at it, at this point, for 20 years, like really.
Yeah, probably 15 years. Yeah, in men's.
No, in men's. But if you think going back to your junior days and that.
Oh, yeah.
This sport had been.
Yeah.
Like it almost felt, it was karma. Like you took 3 against the Iceman, and now so that's all you get or something, right? Did you ever, I mean, you're a numbers guy, math guy, you're in the investment, but did you ever think, like, why is this happening? That was obviously one of those moments, right? You're just this just seems.
It was. And as a matter of fact, when I got home, I can't remember if it was the same day or the next day.
Did the boys know where you were? Like, did they, had you left fast or just?
I left I didn't say a word to anybody. I walked out and they knew I left, but that's all they knew. It was either that day or the next day. I phoned Jeff Ryan and I said, I think you should skip in the MCA.
Really? Yeah. So a lot of this was on you. Your own. You just felt.
Yeah, that's the way I roll. Is I put it on myself, and maybe it was. So anyhow, Jeff talked me off the ledge and said, "No, we're going to go in the MCA. We're going to have some fun. If things go okay, they go okay."
To that point in the season, it hadn't been fun.
It had gotten to the point where it was not fun now because we had done that poorly.
And yet you had these new rules. You're playing this free rock, 3 rock free guard zone. This should be fun. This is your game.
And also too, I was coming off 2 years of not making the provincials. My first 2 times I didn't make provincials previous to this.
So who else was on that? Rob was on that team with you with David Smith, wasn't he? Yeah.
Right.
And then and was that with Keith as well at lead, or was it?
It was Dave Smith, Rob Meakin, and Ronnie. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because I know we did beat you one of those years. Oh, that was with Boswick at I don't even remember the club we were at, but
John Boswick. Yeah.
I cut that stuff out. Nobody cares about me. But anyway, I apologize for the loss. You and Dave just didn't sort of connect.
No.
Dave had a great slide, and he was a good player. Obviously,
we did pretty well in bonspiels, but Dave and I had no chemistry together. Like, Dave's a great curler, fantastic curler, but our personalities they didn't mesh together. And I was so used to playing with guys that I knew. And the reason I was playing with Dave was basically because I recruited Rob, and Rob suggested Dave because we had an opening. And so, it just didn't work. And I mean, clearly Dave went on, in fact, 94, he won. So, like, after our 2 years together, he showed what a great player he was. Well, he obviously was before that. So I had kind of a couple of years that weren't really going the way I wanted to.
And what had Jeff been doing before then, I guess, too?
Jeff,
he even said he was kind of in and out of the game a little, right?
Yeah, he wasn't playing a lot, but he played, Dave Iverson was his third.
That's right, yeah.
And Keith Fenton, and I forget their fourth, Terry Henry, I think. The provincials were in Thompson. And they lost the semifinal, I think. So then I was making a change. In fact, I said to the team, I said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. So any of you guys want to do anything, you go ahead and do it.
Well, when did you meet Rob then?
Well, I met Rob just through, we were on opposite teams, but through socializing, he was curling with Stout and he played in the mixed. He did, he did a lot of things. And so it was the late 80s. I kind of got to know him. And then we started curling together. I guess it was 91, 92.
So you and him were connected for
Since 91, 92.
like
we
a
curled,
long time. Yeah.
until he was hurt so bad he couldn't play anymore.
Oh, was that part of it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that season, this is a lost season.
Yeah, so I'm crossing the bridge, and then I phone Jeff and I say, things just aren't going well. Why don't we just switch it around? We got nothing to lose.
You'd never probably had that.
I'd never ever felt that low or thought that before. Never. And Jeff, because he's always supportive, always has been, always will be, he talked me out of it, and he said, no, we're just going to go in the MCA. We're going to see what happens. And the next thing you know, we play in the MCA. We're sort of struggling along, and by the end of the MCA, all of a sudden we were gaining some confidence, and we got our spot. And we weren't a high seed in that provincial. I think we were 5 or 6 or something like that. Yeah.
Really, it was just because you were always consistently usually 1 or 2.
Yeah,
most
exactly,
years
exactly. No, so it was a reflection of the previous couple of years plus that year in particular. And then so we go on to win the provincial, and I don't know, maybe we're feeling fresh because we hadn't really done anything. So
you didn't have all those extra games.
No,
you never qualified at your age at that point. Because you're how old now at that point? You're about like
I am 38.
38 at that point. Yeah. You're still you look at a lot of the guys now. I mean, Cooey, like a lot of these guys are there, but you're not at the beginning anymore.
No.
Was there any close calls in that provincial? I was trying to remember. I was in Ontario at that time.
I don't recall anything as being like, there was close games, but nothing that was. We ended up, I guess, in some ways getting a break. I think it was Stoughton lost to Rob Ramage or something. Somebody lost to Rob Ramage, and we played Rob in the final. And I think he had sort of peaked and now was somewhere where he wasn't expecting to be, and so it probably allowed us a bit easier time to win that final.
So you're heading to this Brier now that has, not everybody's at their peak, but you've still got Al Hackner. Like this was the Brier of skips, right? Ed Werenich. Yeah. You got Rick Folk. Brad and out of all these different names, Brad Height's the one who actually kind of like emerges. Yeah. But even the PEI team, right, with Peter Gallant, they were a tough team. Yeah. It was a pretty
stacked Brier.
Yeah.
One of the more stacked probably at that time that there had been. Yeah.
Were you still having fun heading into it? Were you over this?
Oh yeah. Like by the end of the MCA, it's amazing how quickly you can come out of the fog, because, by the end of the MCA, we were actually playing pretty good. And so, and feeling good, like to go from right down at the bottom to now heading to the Brier. I mean, I hadn't been to the Brier for 7 years, and
didn't go in with expectations necessarily. Then you just kind of went, like, did you go in to have fun?
No, we went in with expectations, like
because you felt like the role had started.
Yeah, we had found ourselves. We couldn't find ourselves in the fall, and it wasn't that we weren't good enough players. And by the end of the MCA, we realized that okay, now we've kind of found what we thought we'd have a few months earlier. So we went in with expectations, and so everybody else did, and got off to a good start. And a lot of guys were kind of grumbling about the frost, some of the ice conditions, and and then after 3 or 4 games, we're still undefeated, and Folk's undefeated, and Kevin Martin was in it too. He's grumbling, and a few of the guys are grumbling about stuff, and I think to us that just added fuel to our fire.
We just got off the Winnipeg Arena ice. This is great.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was better by then.
Actually, 95 was the first year Hans did it.
Okay.
And so it wasn't perfected, but it was much, much better.
And okay, take me to the semifinal game.
Yeah, against Martin.
I still feel like it's a fascinating look at Kevin Martin's mindset. You struggle now to think about it because Kevin's had so much success, but he'd won 1 Brier.
Yeah.
So he was like the young Burtnyk rink, if you will, in 91.
Yeah.
And then had that sort of blowout at the Worlds. Didn't win a lot of fans in Winnipeg with how it went down. And here he is now. Now guess what? He's playing Manitoba. He was still evolving, I guess, right? And, even watching it on television, and maybe you felt it there, Kevin lost it a little in that game. still early in the game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you sense it that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The first end, our team, we had lost the night before to Brad after being in first place easily all week long. And so we're the ones that are having to reprove ourselves kind of thing or get our confidence back. And my 3 guys hadn't been to the Brier before, right? So
I forget that, right? Even though Jeff Scott, obviously his brother had great success and they're all great players, but
no, yeah. So all 3 of them, this is their first Brier. Yeah. And so, now the pressure is increasing each game, right? And we get off to a tough start. The first end, guys miss a few shots. And next thing you know, I'm looking at 4.
So you could tell your team you could just tell the guys were.
Well, I knew they were feeling the nerves. Yeah. And so I made a draw for 1 in the first end to get our point. And I, was hoping maybe that settled things down. And Kevin's team was the opposite. They were on the upswing and sensing maybe a little bit of a potential to jump on us. And they made a bunch of shots again in the second end, and we struggled a little bit, and they had us in huge trouble. And then that's where sort of the famous part of the game came, where Kevin decides to play a guard on his first one to plug a hole to force me to play like a 25 or whatever foot raise straight back on straight ice. Like it's interesting because nowadays it's people would say, well, you just draw around the guard. Well, you couldn't.
Yeah.
You couldn't. It wasn't possible. And so, we fortunately we throw the rock. We have no other choice. Make the bump back, and it's dead behind in the back 4. And so, if you looked at it in today's world, you'd think, well, you just come around and bump it back. But again, you can't. It's not there. And even the draw is not there. So he played a 25-foot raise on the long guard that he purposely threw, or the team talked him into, or at least in his mind, the team talked him into, and didn't make the shot.
So he's 2 down.
So he's down 2, and he's had
with 8 ends to go.
He was sitting 4 on us in the first end, and looking like he might get 4 in the second end. It's dejecting for him. And he's younger guy too, right? He feels he should be up a bunch of points, and I could just see it in his face, even as I slid by at the end of the end to go to the other end. I slid by, and I could hear him say to the other guys, well, no way we should have played the guard. Why did you guys talk me into playing the guard? And like, for me, being around the game long enough, I knew, okay, we've got an opportunity here to maybe put this game away, because he's feeling vulnerable. The team's feeling dejected. Like, if we can play a good end, we're probably going to steal. And as it turned out, we did. But for me too, their reaction to that occurrence was a motivator to me, and felt good. And it's interesting because I've had Walchuk and Bartlett at my house in Phoenix down to golf, and we've talked about that shot. And
so who did call the shot? What's their story?
Yeah, I don't think I ever got a straight answer. Walchuk wasn't on the team at the time. It was Kevin Park.
That's Kevin Park. Yeah, that's right. But Bartlett was there.
Was on the team. Yeah.
No, Don's told his version of that story too, and like I say, I've talked to James about it. I haven't talked to K Park yet, but
and it was interesting because like Don had said that him and Kevin had talked too, and that they actually called that as one of the best shots that they had seen in the Brier. Which, if you look at it on TV, it doesn't look like anything all that special, right? But the degree of difficulty was a lot more than what people realize.
Well, it's like the Hackner double, right? So in the hot shots over the last decade or whatever, when they started doing it, that became one of the shots you had to play for points, and everybody would make it. Well, because now you know how much it's going to curl, the ice, the broom sweeping, they've got the control of it. 1985, that was a really hard shot, because the ice conditions and everything else involved.
Yeah.
And in that case with Kevin, what I think is fascinating, we got all the games up now, the 95, 96, 97, loses to you in 95, loses the final in 96 to Stoughton. Now here he is playing Peters in 97. Is this going to be like a three-peat for Manitoba over Martin? And if you watch that 97 final, it's very clear that in 2 years from what happened in that game in 95, that he has matured. Because if you remember that 97 final against Vic, it's nutty. the game's all over the map. There's threes. There's what, 18,000 screaming people in the stands. And Kevin kept his head in that game. Unlike, I think, 2 years before. I think he had to have learned from it. You think about it, you're just 2 down.
Oh, yeah. 8 ends to go.
On ice like that, lots can happen.
Exactly. Well, and they had shown that they're capable of lying a few on us. But yeah, it's interesting. Actually, a little anecdote that I'm sure people don't realize is Kevin lost to me in 95. And in 96, he lost to Ken Tresser, my brother-in-law.
That's right, yeah.
And then in 97, he's playing in that final and almost lost to Scott Grant, who's my other brother-in-law.
That's right.
So we sit around the Sunday dinner table and we just about had the triple against Martin.
Well, and part of the joke, I think, there, especially now watching that game, is if Scott and Denny had only swept properly, because, that was that era of, so they're sweeping hits, and all of a sudden, Vic, if you watch, right, Vic hits a lot of guards on those hits. Why is Denny sweeping on the inside? And you can watch it now, right? It's impossible to watch and not know, no, you're sweeping the wrong, you're sweeping it into the curl. And it's funny looking back on it now. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
And then Brad Heidt. So what do you remember about Brad? By the way, haven't released it yet. That's another one that I have in the vault. Talked to Heidt at the trials in Saskatoon.
Okay.
Great talk. Bit of a character, right? Like you talked about how maybe Jimmy was a little fiery. So Brad would be.
Brad's 5 or 10 times as much.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to get a gauge.
Probably 10.
Going into that, you just got to keep your head together anyway.
Yeah, well, it was kind of the rubber match, right? We'd beat him in the round robin, then he beat us in the 1-2 game.
We talked about all the names of the skips. No one's thinking that Brad Height's going to be in the final. He was sort of an unexpected one there, right?
Well, that might be in the general public, but I think amongst the curlers, it's no surprise. I mean, it's not as though he's an unknown, right?
And Mark's a great player, and they were an interesting combo.
Yeah, they were, and for us now, we went into that game a little bit different than we went into the 1-2 game. The 1-2 game, we were going in, we were on a roll, we were pretty confident. I don't know, maybe we were due for a slip up, right? Then we get the game turned around against Kevin, and so now we're playing Brad in the final. And for my guys too, now this is their 3rd playoff game in a row of their first Brier, so now they're getting a little more comfortable at playing under the pressure. And yeah, I think it was an interesting game. It wasn't probably the most well-curled game ever, but we made the shots when we had to. We got up. We kind of let the lead go in the 9th end when we let them back into the game, gave them 3 when we were 4 up. But the guys played a good last end and left me with an open hit, which is what you dream of to win a Canadian championship. And
so as bad as you started the year, you went on a stretch where even that, you say that 1-2 game, like you hadn't lost much.
No.
And then you hit into that Worlds. And actually, I think, you were the first team to go undefeated in the men's Worlds since I think maybe strangely hadn't really happened that often.
No, it hadn't.
I want to mention someone who you might recall. So Pea Lindholm.
Oh, yes.
Was he there in 90? Yeah, because he was there in 95.
Oh, he was, yeah.
Pea had a great compliment to you. He said something about, he said as Europeans, where they had to learn something about the sport was, use the example. He says, you get a Kerry Burtnyk. He's so friendly to you. You have beers and it's a good time and then he's on the ice and it's just, he's going to rip your heart out. He's just, and he says, we didn't understand that. It seemed like, why are they so friendly here? And then, that was in my interview with him. It was so funny how he talks to that. But I guess my point is, fast forward 14 years later, for you, the world is much better at the sport. You're playing a lot of much higher caliber teams now that these countries had really progressed, I think, in 95. Did you notice that?
Definitely, yeah. There was such a difference between 95 and 81. It was night and day, like in terms of the level of competition and
So how did you go into, like, even looking back, you guys just kept rolling?
Yeah, we kept rolling. The ice conditions were...
Was that Hans doing
good.
ice? Or was it in Brandon?
I believe it was Hans doing it. Yes, it was in Brandon. And they were to our liking, and we were playing well, so we had the confidence going. We got the odd break when we needed it. Actually, a interesting side bit to Pea's comments there that you said is he paid me one of my highest compliments after the final, there was a party, a victory party in the North 40 where all the teams were there, and we were celebrating. Of course, our team celebrating a little more. But he came over to me and he said, it's one thing you should know. He said, this is one of the first times that most of the teams for Europe were actually cheering for Canada in the final.
That is a compliment. Yeah.
That is a big compliment.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've told that story many times over the years. Pay and I were good friends for a number of years on the circuit back. And it was something it meant a lot to me when he said that.
Yeah. You were always like Kerry. I don't think there was too many. And I wonder this, and I don't know how to ask this, because I've speculated this with other people. If I look back on your legacy, your career, do you feel like, this isn't disparaging to you, I don't want it to be disparaging to other skips, but let's just say that sometimes skips can be a little more aloof, a little more kind of assholes, or just more, you kind of got to be you're at the other end of the sheet in a way. Sometimes it's winning above all cost. I wonder, do you feel like, I think when people think of you, they don't think you had that in you. You were always engaging, always personal. You were always like, and do you wonder if, and maybe you couldn't have been that person, but do you think if you'd have had a different kind of success or another level, if you'd have been that way, or you just couldn't have ever been that way? And again, see, it's hard to ask this question without, I'm not going to name any names, but because it's interesting you mentioned that in 95 and the European teams. Like, did you see that in other skips? Like, say they can be prickly, I guess is the word to think about.
There's no doubt. I mean, in order to be a successful skip, first of all, you have to have confidence in yourself, which means it's very easy to be overconfident, or very easy to take that and develop some traits that aren't so nice.
It's like Lord of the Rings with too much power, you get all consuming.
Yeah, it certainly is easy to do that. I'm not going to name any names, and I certainly saw a few examples over my time of guys that had their success, and then they thought like they were the first ones to ever have the success, and they weren't.
And they certainly never missed a shot. It would have been, that must have been a flat spot, or that must have been this, or that must, yeah.
But in terms of your question about whether I had more of that, whether that might have helped, that's something, of course, there's no way of really ever knowing. I think I had enough confidence in myself that whether I acted a certain way or didn't act a certain way, that confidence was there in my mind. So I'm not sure how much more I could bring out, but what some of the guys I curled with, they brought out more in me by their support and their friendship and the off-ice stuff that I'm not sure other guys get. And so, you can argue one way or the other whether something could have happened or not happened. And we were fortunate enough to have quite a bit of success together. And, things could have gone one way or the other at various times. But I don't think I would have wanted to be different than I was. And I certainly wouldn't have wanted any of my teammates to be any different than they were. I'm not sure that really answers the question, but
and Vic's not here. But was Vic as nice as you then, or was he? Did he have a little more edge to him? Do you think?
I think Vic had more of an edge to him, but Vic was a super nice guy. There's no question, and his edge was on the ice, not off the ice.
You certainly had that edge on the ice too. There's no doubt. Yeah, but I get so just to put a bow on that, you couldn't have been more of an asshole because that probably wasn't you, and if you had been. Even if you'd have won a little more, it wouldn't have made any difference.
It wouldn't have made it any better. No,
probably worse. Yeah.
No.
What's that, Patty? Mind if I say something? Yeah. What do you? Yeah.
I do.
Absolutely. What you?
No, I've always said this to people that, I know how competitive he was. He just never showed it like a lot of other people. I saw him during the Olympic trials when they went 0-3 and managed to come back from that, especially considering his health issues. But I always say Kerry is the least vain person I've ever met, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have the fire in him.
You used the perfect word, because I think, particularly when we think of a lot of skips, we do think of vain or ego. It's not that you didn't want it. And you're right. Just because you don't express it or show it, Also, why does it actually have to be encouraged that you shouldn't have to be an asshole to win, like, right? Or have that sort of edge.
I don't think it gets you anything more.
No. Or what's interesting about it is, particularly if you're female and you demonstrate a little bit of that, actually it's discouraged. Jennifer used to get a lot of grief over stuff. She was a man and she did some of this stuff. When Kevin Martin does what she did, nobody really thinks that's enough. Definitely a bit of a different era of the sport. It is more business, better for worse, probably for worse. I kind of feel like I think
Things are definitely different.
you would hope, though, that the friendship part, the team building part can still always survive. And particularly, I hope the engagement with the fans, and which still seems to exist. Players are engaging still. They're not too far removed from everything, but it's a big part of it. So Brandon must have been it was a benefit to be in Brandon.
Brandon was phenomenal. Yeah. Not because we won, but Brandon was phenomenal because, all our supporters that could possibly go went, and
the Europeans too, who were supporting you, as you said.
Yeah, no. And, obviously we were going in there playing well and feeling confident. And so that's the kind of time you want to be playing in something like that. And
now, when were you diagnosed again? So that was
I was diagnosed in 98, the first time, and then had it dealt with later that year. And then, it came back actually in the fall of 2000, but I kept it to myself and went into the 01 Brier, like knowing that I had to do something right after the Brier, but.
And your team didn't know, or?
No, my team knew. They were the only ones that knew.
Well, Patty knew.
Well, of course, yeah. Patty knew, and I don't think our families even knew, did they?
It was, so it's a melanoma, was it, or what was it?
It was called dermatofibrosarcoma protuberans.
Okay, so it's not a melanoma then.
No, it's a very rare growth that is very stubborn in coming back, but it doesn't grow quickly typically.
Okay.
And so it stubbornly came back the first time.
We didn't even talk about that 90. So you went to that trials in 97. You were supportive of that. Your team got to go. You earned
absolutely,
it.
Yeah.
And you lose the semifinal, right? I think it was.
No, we lost.
Oh no, sorry. I'm jumping to 01. So in 97, you guys lost.
We lost the last game of the round robin to Stoughton, which knocked us out of the playoffs.
So you're diagnosed just how much after that?
So then in 97, 98, we played the provincials in.
And that's with the Brier in Winnipeg that year, which it hadn't been in since 1970.
Yeah, the Brier is going to be in Winnipeg. We play the provincials in Verdun, I think it is, and we lose to Duguid in the final, and then come home and get my results that it's cancer, like the next day.
That was the very next day you get back. Okay. Yeah. So it was kind of already in development into that provincial and.
Well, actually, no. There was what I thought was a cyst. They were just going to test it just because. So there was this little.
So it's not weighing on your mind.
No, it wasn't weighing on my mind at that point.
Yeah.
Not until after. So when I went to the Brier in 2001, actually, I told my team on the way to Ottawa in November that it had come back, but It wasn't such that I had to deal with it immediately because it's slow growing, right? So I was going to take time to figure out best way to treat it. So I told my team as we went to Ottawa and said, keep it to yourselves. And then that weekend we won our trial spot in Ottawa. And then a couple months later we win the province and we go to the Brier. So now we're at the Brier. And by that time I've also been seeing some people and figure out what I'm going to do. And so, of course, all the reporters are saying, how's your health? And, so I basically had to lie and say that everything was fine. So we played the 01 Brier knowing that I'm supposed to get treatment right after, which means I technically can't go to the Worlds.
Oh,
but
really?
I would have gone to the Worlds. Yeah. So my doctors were saying, well, what do you mean we might have to delay it? So anyhow, that was a bit of an interesting week because that was where it was on my mind the whole time and very front of mind because it was my second time, right? So, yeah.
And then you play in the trials.
So after the Brier, at the beginning of April, I started treatments in Toronto for 5 months.
Okay.
From April till.
Did you even know then if you were going to come back and curl the next season, or?
Well, the plan was I was going
Was it?
to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although,
because we had our trial spot.
no, but in the midst of all this, so you got your trial spot. At that point, it had been decided, okay, we're not playing playdowns next year, or that wasn't quite there yet, or it was pretty close. Like, there's a lot going on in that.
Yeah, no. I was in Toronto when the boycott started. So the guys were calling me and we were making decisions. I was already in Toronto getting treatments when we made this decision. So when we were at the Brier, the talk hadn't started yet about that.
At the Brier, I kind of remember though that there was rumblings about it.
Okay, there might have been, yeah.
It was out there. It wasn't nothing. It was firmed up. Maybe.
But we didn't realize that teams were going to actually forego the next season.
Okay.
At that stage, or at least the way I remember it. But it was very shortly thereafter.
That's a lot going on for you that year.
There was a lot going on for me. Yeah. Now I'm living in Toronto at my cousin's house for 5 months and got Patty and 2 young girls back in Winnipeg.
Yeah, and how old are the kids at that time? Then they're going to be
the kids. Well, that's in 2001, so they're like 6 or 7 years old. Yeah,
that's a crazy year then.
Yeah,
I guess what came out of that year was some good news, is that the treatment worked. And
yeah, actually, another quirky little thing was, of course, 01 is also very famous for 9/11.
Oh God, that's right.
So 9/11 was my second day back at work after being off for 5 or 6 months.
So there's a few clients calling you.
Right. A few clients calling. And the second day, the planes hit. And that day I got an email of my results that everything was all clear. So myself and Patty and her dad went out to the keg to celebrate my results while,
the rest of the world is
in turmoil. Yeah, so it was kind of a bizarre day.
That is a strange year altogether.
Oh, yeah. And then 2 months later, we're playing in the Olympic trials with a chance to go to the Olympics.
And so Kevin Martin sort of got his revenge, I guess. Yeah.
He did in the end. Yes, he did.
Yeah. He didn't leave you the 30-foot raise this time around. Although it was I rewatched it now since. It's still a pretty entertaining game.
Oh, it was.
You guys were you were in doing full 4 rock, or was it through? I think you guys played 4 rock for sure.
4 rock.
I'm sure you did. Yeah.
So Don Walchuk in that game, I think, made 12 raisebacks. And that was in an era where that wasn't common.
I think what was even more fascinating is Kevin would call an end around them a little bit, almost. It wasn't just a bailout shot in his regard. I think Kevin, in some degree, they were the team that actually started planning around it.
Yeah.
Well, when this happens and this happens, I'll let Don do this. Right.
But in that game, they had no choice because Carter Rycroft was not very good. We had them in trouble most ends. And Don, that I've said to this day that probably the single best curled game by an individual that I played against in all my years.
I mean, I haven't sat down with Don yet. I've just chatted with him. I've talked to Bartlett a fair bit about it. He's probably one of the most unheralded players in Canada in a way.
Oh,
people love to talk about Wayne, and Wayne is because Wayne's played in so many positions, and Madaw's a great player. But Walchuk, pound for pound, might be one of the best shooters that there was.
He's got a pretty incredible record, yeah.
But he's a pretty quiet, mostly reserved guy, I think, right?
He's certainly not a guy that's going to toot his own horn.
Because you even recruited him, right?
So I did, yeah. Yeah, and we still, he's coming to my place in March to golf, yeah.
That's good. Take me through so, because that trials is what, November, late into your
December, yeah. First week of December, I think, 01.
Taking a step back, or even thinking about it now, looking back on 2001 then, I didn't even really recognize what a crazy year that must have been for you from a personal level, from just everything going on.
Everything, yeah.
I guess one of my thoughts is you kept playing and kept competing and kept at it and went to more Briers.
Yeah.
Was there a moment though where you're, okay, this has been fun, but I'm stepping away?
After we lost out in the trials, and we knew,
was
Jeff? Rob backed away from curling.
Physically, he was struggling. He said
he was struggling. Family wise, it made sense, but I think it was mostly the physical part that caused them to do that.
So you guys already even knew Rob was going to step away.
Yeah, he had told us right partway through that season, and then so we had a few slams to finish off afterwards, and
the slams that you had helped create.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't have a provincial to go to, but we had slams to play in.
Do you recall then? I mean, and probably it's a blur if you think about that year. Then the moment you talked about so and so calling so and so, was there what transpired to make the call to say, okay, we're not doing this?
Well, I think us as a team, and certainly myself as an individual, I don't think there was ever a question what we were going to do, because this was all about trying to force an issue with the CCA and get things we'd hoped for years. And this seemed like a good avenue to really put some serious pressure on them. So a lot of the phone calls were more about seeing who else would be in to support, me phoning a few guys to say, are you going to support this as well? And a lot of that is more what the phone calls were about, was because we were a definite.
Well, and you think about it. So you're pulling your bone into the dock here. This is the late stages of your career. You're giving up your last few good cracks at another Brier, another Purple Heart. Was that a difficult question for you, or it sounds like you were pretty committed?
Well, it wasn't easy, but in my mind, it was the only decision.
So you just lost the final. If you had won that final, and maybe you've been asked this question before.
Yeah.
What was your decision?
Well, I don't think I can honestly say because I didn't win. So I don't know if that would have changed anything or not. I'd like to think it wouldn't have, but it's possible it might have. For one thing, I got 3 other guys to think about, right? So it's possible that could have a bearing on it, but I'd like to think that it wouldn't have, because to me, as you say, I gave up my last prime years.
2 years, at least 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. But prime years. And I had very few prime years left to go, because you're getting older. This was a chance to move forward on issues that we thought were serious for a long, long time. And I thought this had a real chance to make the game better. And it's going to make it better for people in the future, not for me, but for those coming behind me.
Do you recall? You know what? I haven't even, and I know Dave well. We see each other here and there. Right? Like, he's talked to me about their decision as a team and what was involved, but I don't recall who called them or the conversation. Do you know who
was this?
It talked to Dave and Randy.
Oh,
that was the situation, right? Where if they had stepped away, and again, remembering too that it wasn't like the Scotties at the time. There's no Team Canada in the Brier. Even if you want to continue to play, you've got to go compete for it.
Yeah.
Now they would have, I believe, had to have given up a lot, the funding, because again, it wasn't like a cash spiel.
Yeah.
You didn't win Brier funds at the time, but there was stuff that came with it.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask Dave this. I never did, but do you know who spoke to them or what the conversation was? Because I can't imagine Kevin spoke to Randy. I don't think that would go well. That wasn't a great relationship, probably.
I'm trying to remember. I definitely didn't speak to Randy. I'm not sure if I spoke to Dave or not.
And they did make the decision not to. And again, I'll one of these days I'll talk to both of them. It wasn't easy, and it was certainly a case where if they had, I think it would have spoken a lot more for all the players.
Oh, it would have been a real coup. And the other team on top of that too at the time was actually Guy Hemmings. Guy Hemmings was he was the new god of curling in terms of the fans, right?
Well, he told me about coming to Winnipeg. He'd come here for a bonspiel or an exhibition, and it'd be packed.
Yeah.
Well, no one knew him in his hometown, and then he'd come to Winnipeg, and he's a superstar.
And he had actually, that was a number of the phone calls, was me talking to Guy, because Guy had moved to France, and he was going to come back. Is he going to come back and join us, or is he going to come back? And in the end, the CCA made him some really serious good offers, or maybe they called it a job or they called it a whatever. So they won out. But I don't think I spoke to Randy or Dave.
Russ was the other one, Russ Howard, I guess. Now he had moved. So Russ at that point was sort of with his new team in New Brunswick.
He's in New Brunswick. And
looking back on it, in a way, it's kind of like there are 2 asterisks on the Furby four victories, right?
Yeah.
In a way. And then, of course, it was interesting how then the next year, I think people think the boycott was 3 years long because none of you guys made it. I don't know if you were just stale at Tankard in the playdowns or something, but it still seemed like a weaker field in that next Brier. We figured that maybe, everybody's going to be back all of a sudden. And then Randy Dutain got to, have a little bit of success, and it was an interesting time. But was there animosity or that kind of grew through different teams, or not necessarily? Or
well, I think it's fair to say there was some. Yeah.
Which is understandable. And they knew it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. There has to be some because, here we are trying to do something and, you have a lot of power to support it and you're not. Doesn't mean I don't understand why you're not, but it would have been a lot real helpful if they would have supported it. I understand why they didn't, but there's still going to be some animosity. Did the rest of us enjoy making the 01 trials, look like ganging up a bit? Yes. And, I think the record showed that, maybe the team was very dominant at the time, but they certainly didn't dominate that when we were playing, and for us, by the time we were back in the Brier playdowns again, our team was no longer. I'm not sure about other teams, but, things had changed over 2 or 3 years. And
your last Brier was the one in Winnipeg, right? I think.
Yes, in 08.
So that still had to be kind of special.
It was very special. It was definitely long after the peak of my career, but I had a hankering.
How old were you at the time? At that point,
I'm 49.
49, yeah, almost, yeah.
Yeah, I'm 49, and I had sort of retired 3 years earlier, and then after a year, I had the feeling that there's one thing I'd like to try, and that's I'd like to try play and get some young guys, and just to see what that would be like. This was my one experiment of my career kind of thing. And so that's the reason I tried, because by that time basically all my friends weren't curling anymore.
Yeah. I was gonna say you'd kind of they'd all aged out, if you will. Or
yeah,
what
they'd
was
all
there?
aged out. I just hadn't realized that I had.
Yeah. And you took another run at the year following, right? That was because did you retire season after?
So
right?
we played in the 08 Brier, and then there was still one more season, and then the season of the trials. So that was the last cycle that I was committing to, and so we went 2 more years, but we didn't. That's when I made a change. Ron Kammerlock's son was playing third for me at the Brier.
I was going to say, is it funny when you say that out loud?
Yeah, it is. Although he didn't find it too funny. Yeah. And so I recruited Don Walchuk at that point for the last 2 years.
Because that's when Kevin went with his young team.
Right. Yeah.
That's when Don landed with you for a bit. Okay.
Yeah. And so we made our effort in the twilight of our careers to, we thought we'd enjoy playing together, plus, see what we could do. And we just, we weren't as good as we once were. So.
And I was trying to recall, you never even entered a seniors play down or any of it, did you at any point? It was no one talking you into it?
The year after, 2010, February of 2010 was the last provincial, that cycle. And so that was my last event with men's. I backed out of slams and stuff after the rest of that year. And then the next year I played with Jeff and Keith and Scott Grant in the seniors. And the only games we played all year were at the end of November. I came back from Phoenix in my shorts and sandals, trudged through the snow literally from the airport into the curling club. And we played zone games to win our zone to get into the provincials, and then played the provincials. We never threw a rock from the zones until provincials. So I don't really call it playing, but I did attempt, and we lost the semis, I think, to John Bubbs.
So you had a good time, but things like Phoenix were going to start getting in the way. And part of it is you just gave 3 decades of your winters to this sport. It's nice to maybe.
I was more than ready to walk away from curling, and the only reason I played in that seniors was because I had a chance to play one last time with some buddies, and that's all we looked at it as is we just wanted to go and have a little bit of fun and play, and the furthest thing from our mind was having any success.
Talk for a minute about that Winnipeg Brier, because it was probably special. I mean, I know you didn't do as well as you probably would have liked, but was there any moment in that event though that you probably kind of felt like this could be my last one? I guess a good chance, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So what was going on in your mind that week, or just anything you remember about the week?
Yeah, I remember the week being overwhelming because this was the first time I played in a Brier at home. And of course it's towards the end of my career. So we were going, at the end of the day, we would go to the Brier patch and and we'd like to have one beer and wind down or two beers.
But everybody wants to see you and say hi.
Yeah, so every time we went, I would be standing talking to people and never got to enjoy it, really. Not that I didn't enjoy talking to people, but it was very overwhelming. And yet we kept going each night because I wanted to, and I felt the obligation too. And, so I don't think that was an advantage for us in terms of our performance. But it was really interesting because that was one of the few times where I felt like, here you are, the center of attention, even though there's other teams that are doing better than you, kind of thing. And it was very nice, but it was very overwhelming.
What's interesting, because you've used a lot of terms, even talking to you, that's unskip-like. You've said the word "we" I don't know how many times in situations, right, where I think I've done a lot of these interviews, Kerry. Yeah. Most skips don't say "we" that often. I'm just telling you.
Okay.
And it's interesting, right? And I wonder too if sometimes you're saying about even being the center of attention. I think you seem like you're a competitive person and you still have that drive, but it's not necessarily for some other external adulation, or it feels like maybe you love the competition itself and you love winning with the team.
Yes.
I don't think you'd have been as good a golfer, as an example, as a curler, because it's like you got three other.
I'm definitely not as good a golfer.
Well, I'm saying if you'd have just spent more time at it, who knows?
Yeah. No, I mean, to me, I think it shows through the guys that I played with and the teams that I chose and the routes that I took, that to me, it was just as important to play with people I liked and enjoy the successes and defeats with those people. And it was really important to me to be able to have fun off of the ice, because we're sacrificing all kinds of family and time to do this. You better be enjoying it, because if you're not getting enjoyment out of it, why bother being out there? I think I acted out a lot different than a lot of guys, but doesn't take away anything from the fire within that wanted to win. Anybody that knows, even when I play a game of pickleball.
I was going to say, if you're playing pickleball, ping pong, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to win.
Monopoly, you want to win.
Yeah.
Well, hey, this is running into the length of a Springsteen concert. And even though you probably might have the energy to go longer, we should try to wrap things a bit. I got a couple of last bits that I guess the only other one, I guess, is, I always usually try to ask this one. Gamesmanship stories I love. So I don't know if you have any of that, or the other thing is just any of those like stories around after a game that you can share that you think of. It's funny, the story that Mark told was about him getting his broom stuck at the tankard, where he got so mad he hammered his broom and it wouldn't come out. And I'm like, Mark, that's a funny story that probably other people tell about you after a game, right? But any other ones that come to mind? Like the gamesmanship one I love, because as you know, yes, it's a gentlemanly sport, but there's always little things. But anything you recall?
I think there was definitely gamesmanship from time to time with a number of guys. To be perfectly honest, I probably never really did anything. Like the closest thing I did to gamesmanship would be if I was playing someone that I didn't particularly care for and one of my teammates made a fluke, I would purposefully turn around and apologize to them just to rub it in a little bit. But that's, I never really felt like I needed that in order to try and do anything more.
And if anyone was doing it with you, it probably didn't work.
No.
You didn't notice it?
Especially after a number of years, maybe they did it to me in my younger days and I didn't even realize it. Yeah. I don't know. But in my later years, I would just kind of chuckle and laugh at it.
Well, like the Wilson boys, which, by the way, I've talked to Tom Wilson.
Yeah.
Did you ever play them a little? You must have.
I played with them.
Oh, did you really?
In Europe for an event.
They would try to do a little bit of that intimidation tactic and stand at the hog line, all that.
Yeah. A fun little story was because Rick Folk became a member of Parliament, and so he couldn't go to, so this was like 82 or 83, somewhere in there. And they had an invite to go, all expenses, to Switzerland and Scotland for 2 weeks. So they asked me if I would go. So I said, sure, I'd love to go.
You looked at your busy schedule.
Yeah, I looked at my busy schedule, said I'll make some time. And so we went, and of course they're using the corn, the two Wilson brothers and Ronnie Mills. And so I used the corn as well. Okay. And they were a little surprised that I could actually sweep a little better than Ronnie Mills. Not as good as the Wilson brothers, but it took a little getting used to, because now we're playing with corn again, and it'd been a number of years since I had done that, or at least three years or something. It seemed like a number of years. So Tom said to me, he said, okay, so when you're calling, call hard if you want us to sweep the rock. And if you want the rock to go backwards, say really hard. And they would supposedly pound it harder. And I'm not so sure it didn't actually happen.
Oh man!
Yeah.
Well, did we miss anything? Is there? I mean, we.
Oh, there's probably other kinds of topics, but yeah, no, it's a lot of stuff. Like, I wished I actually remembered more about a few things, but
I should have caught you, a few years earlier. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure what
that's okay.
when the right time would have been. But the reason I don't remember as much about some of the stuff like the Players Association is I was just doing it because I should be doing it, and we used to have meetings with the MCA, and I'd show up to try and get some rules changed about playdowns and stuff. None of the other guys would. But I just felt it as an obligation. And so it wasn't really a big memory, because that's just what I did. And
you're always just trying to move it a little bit forward and trying to make it more.
In my way, try to help it along. And
Well, one last question then, because
okay.
Now that I remember something from my childhood days. So what's the largest number of people in a Birds in the Bush game that you recall?
I would say it happened in Switzerland, and there was probably about 15 of us.
Okay, yeah.
And who was it? Somebody lost 2 or 3 rounds in a row. I can't even remember. Unfortunately, I can't remember who it was, so I won't make it up. But 15, I think, was the most. And of course, in Switzerland, it's like 10, 12 bucks a drink. So it was very expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was fun. I think we got it done.
Yeah, no, that's good. It was a lot of fun talking to you.
All right. It's good. Thanks, Kerry.
All right, Kevin. Really enjoyed it.
Yep. Hurry! Hurry!
Did we do better than, do you even remember me interviewing in grade? I think I was 7 or 8. I mean, I know life's a blur, right? It's like,
yeah.
I still remember that. And
I know I did a couple of those things.
Yeah.
They were all a little bit different.
Well, I just remember, it was in a classroom, and all the kids were in all there. And
oh, okay.
you don't remember?
No, I don't remember.
I just remember asking you about partying at the MCA, and I think you were a little uncomfortable with that question, given that you were in a junior high.
Was 90 the year that Melichuk won?
No, 89.
So then 90 was Edwards?
Yeah. Yeah, you lost Edwards in the final, right?
No, we lost him in the A final, I think.
Last year at the 100th, I talked to some of the Edwards boys. They were mentioning, they had a perspective that when they played you in that 1990 game, you were poised to get a deuce maybe in the first hand. I don't know if you remember it, but
Yeah, I remember it around the corner guard.
and it made me wonder, particularly in that era when the ice wasn't always great in provincials. Do you think your aggressive style cost you in a few of those provincials through the 80s? I mean, it started to improve after that, but I wonder in the 80s if...
Well, it might have, but there's no doubt the ice in general, especially when it was the years that were in the Winnipeg Arena in particular, seemed to be the most. They were wild, like especially in the earlier 80s. Like and it wasn't the same every game. Like on day 3, it could be totally different from day 1, but not really in a good way. The ice would fall back, or there were strange things that happened. Like one year in '89 against the year Melichuk won, we played Murray Warren in the semi. And we had suddenly in the semi, we had 4 rocks that slid and went pretty straight. And we had 4 rocks that were heavy and curled all of a sudden. And of course, that's back when everything was designated as to what rocks you had to throw and all that stuff. And it was just weird stuff. And yet those rocks weren't like that the day before. But it was so noticeable. It was like, I'm talking about 10, 15 feet of weight. Just weird stuff. And I mean, that was one in particular. They didn't always happen that way, but it was very rarely. The first time that I ever remember the Winnipeg Arena having what I would call decent curling ice was 95, the first year Hans did it.
That was his first year, was 95.
I think it was his first year, yeah.
That was Hans's first. Okay.
Yeah.
I recalled that you lost in the pre-trials for the 2009 Olympic trials to Jason Gunlickson.
That knocked us out, yes.
And then I started thinking, did you play his grandfather in the 83 tankard?
No, I did not.
Okay.
We were in the tankard, but I did not play him.
Didn't make it to the late
I
stages.
did watch from the stands as he was winning, though.
It's quite a bookend.
That was pretty wild. The ice in that particular year definitely, was one of those ones where if you could get on a roll with making the odd hit and roll to a place that no one could get to, you could sneak things out. And I think that's a lot to do with what Lloyd accomplished.
The other way to look at it, though, Kerry, is truthfully, without that bad ice, it would have been way less entertaining. And that's what we found by the time, Pat.
Well, especially with those old rules, I guess. But
Pat Ryan and Kevin Martin come along and there's no corn broom and the ice gets better. It was a bad combination. The one story, I know you mentioned it to me afterwards at the banquet. I just wanted you to relate. I think you'd tell it better than I do. How did you get the nickname Bubba? I don't really recall people calling you that in any of the news scribes or in the papers. Is it generally a personal friend's nickname? It's not one that, we don't think of you as like the wrench. I don't know if he was as widely used.
Oh, definitely not. No, the wrench was like a household kind of name for him. No, my nickname it was a little more boring how it started. It would have been, and I don't even know what year, but it probably was somewhere in the early 80s. There was a football player by the name of Bubba Smith that played, I believe, for the Baltimore Colts. So we're sitting at the Kinnaird household, and as you probably know, we used to have a big group of people that hung out together for years, with the Kinnairds and Montfort and Joel Gagne and Lyle Derry and all kinds of Mert Thompson. And football's on one day, and for whatever reason, must have been a big game, and for whatever reason, I was the only one that knew who Bubba Smith was. I think it was Montfort, I'm not sure, but somebody after that just started calling me Bubba because I knew who Bubba Smith was. So it's nothing that's really an exciting story, but that's kind of how it started. And then for a number of years around Assiniboine, mostly with friends, I was known as Bubba.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually Jean Sonmore did a book called Burnt by the Rock. And there was a chapter on a number of curlers. And for my chapter, she decided to title my chapter Bubba Becomes a Broker.